The story begins with the royal family of Goski, renowned for their sun-kissed golden hair, a hallmark of their lineage. Save for one, Princess Clare. Clare's rose-colored hair was inherited from her mother, a mere servant girl. Shortly after Clare's birth, her mother vanished without a trace, leaving Clare alone. As she grew, the royal family's treatment of her became increasingly harsh. On this particularly bright and warm day, hidden behind a bush just outside the garden, a small figure crouched low. It was Clare, her gaze fixed on 3 stones she'd found on the ground. She was a lovely child, if a little unkempt, her bright, round eyes alight with the thrill of her discovery. Sitting on the ground, she murmured to herself, "Do you want me to introduce my friends to you?" But a prickle of unease at her back made her freeze. Clare startled, whirling around to see her father, the queen, and her older brother standing there. Clutching the stones tightly in her hand, Clare scrambled to her feet and quietly slipped away. "They don't usually come this way," she worried, her heart pounding. "I have to hurry. If they see me, they'll be angry." Suddenly, the precious stones slipped from her coat, rolling across the ground and coming to rest on the main path. Clare sighed in frustration. "What do I do? I can't go that way." In a flash of desperation, she darted out to retrieve them. At the same moment, someone else was approaching. A sharp slap cracked across Clare's face. The blow sent her sprawling, a whimper escaping her lips. "Oh, my skin hurts." Above her, a furious shout pierced the air. "What in the world are you doing?" The voice belonged to her brother. Instantly docile, Clare scrambled to her feet, bowing her head. "I'm sorry, brother." He, however, showed no brotherly affection. With a cruel backhand, he sent her tumbling again. "Hey, watch where you're going," he roared, his voice dripping with contempt. Though Clare trembled, he continued his tirade. "Are you deliberately trying to cause trouble? Who's your brother? Don't address me with the same lineage as this vermin." Disgusting. The queen, who had been watching, finally intervened. "Prince, stop it. The child has committed a blunder. Yes, but is it necessary for someone of your royalty to handle it personally?" The prince seemed taken aback by his mother's defense of the girl. His confusion was palpable. Sure enough, within seconds, a sneer twisted his lips. "Well then," he drawled, his voice laced with sarcasm, "what if I accidentally become contaminated by her? It's Clare's misfortune to be so young and have to endure being assaulted by several people." Moments later, in a swift and brutal turn of events, the queen was beheaded before Clare's very eyes. Bound and helpless, Clare sat in a room, awaiting her own fate. The queen had departed to meet her ancestors so quickly, she hadn't even had time to close her eyes. Clare looked up at the prince, her eyes wide with fear and bewilderment. How could her brother be so calm? Terror seized her, and she began to tremble uncontrollably. The fear of meeting the same end as the queen was overwhelming. Sobs racked her small body. One thought consumed her. "I want to live." She couldn't fathom what the Goski royal family could have done to offend this black-clad man, to warrant such a horrific punishment. He now turned his sword towards the prince's neck. The black-clad man coldly pointed his sword at the prince's neck. At the precipice of death, the prince suddenly cried out, "Wait!" He turned a chilling gaze towards Clare. "Kill this vermin first," he commanded. With each word, Clare's panic intensified. "I don't intend to beg for mercy, but the last survivor of the Goski royal family cannot be this vermin, not even for a few seconds." The man in black rolled his eyes and looked at Clare. Tears streamed down Clare's face as she stammered pleas for mercy. The man in black hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "What must be," he declared, raising his sword high. Clare held her breath, squeezing her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. But 3 minutes ticked by, and nothing happened. Clare's eyes flew open in astonishment. She looked up just as a torrent of blood erupted from her brother's neck, flowing like a crimson river. Good receives good, evil receives evil. Those who scheme ultimately bring ruin upon themselves. Suddenly, a long-haired man, strikingly handsome, appeared, clapping his hands as if watching a play. "Excellent idea, Prince," he exclaimed. "Even if it's just for a second, I'll return the humiliation tenfold." He then turned to the man in black. "Isn't that right, Your Excellency?" The man in black remained silent, seemingly lost in thought. "All right, entertainment ends here. The stench of blood is overwhelming. I need a bath." Abruptly, the man in black lowered his sword. "Your Highness," he said, stepping before Clare with a grave expression, "we cannot kill this princess. Claire's mouth fell open. Could be true. Did she have a chance to live? The prince, too, was stunned by the pronouncement. He pointed at Clare, his voice sharp with disbelief. What are you saying? You pity her? Is that it? Upholding the law of the land, the man in black declared. No, Your Highness. According to Article 12, Section 17 of the SBI law, no one under the age of 18 may be executed. As this princess is not yet 18, she cannot be put to death. The prince scoffed. So you're saying that to uphold such a law, we should spare the life of a defeated nation's royal? I apologize, Your Highness, but this is not merely a law. No king in history has ever violated this law. The prince's face hardened. He frowned. I knew this would be difficult for you, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. Even if royal blood is mixed with that of a commoner, royalty is still royalty. This is the last survivor of the royal family. He stepped closer to Clare, his eyes boring into hers. This little thing will grow up, he stated with chilling certainty. If she forms a legitimate plan for revenge, it will be troublesome. The man in black seemed momentarily at a loss. He couldn't predict the future, couldn't know what Clare might become. But before he could respond, Clare found her own voice, her own desperate plea for survival. I won't, she cried. I won't seek revenge. Both the man in black and the prince watched her intently. Tears streamed down Clare's face as she addressed them. Just like the prince said, I'm a half-breed. How could I possibly seek revenge looking like this? I can't. If you let me live, I'll live as if I were dead. Truly, I beg you. Clare's desperate plea, however, did not move the prince. He merely sneered. How strange, he muttered, clutching his head in exasperation. Why do these half-breeds always cling to me? The man in black remained silent. Then, a moment later, the prince uttered words that stunned Clare. Fine, do as you please. He turned to leave, adding over his shoulder, I'll let her live until she's 18, as you wish. But in return, you'll take her to Sedan. Following the prince's command, the guards quickly unlocked Clare's shackles. A hand reached out to her. It was the man in black. His gesture was more than just an offered hand. It was a beacon of hope in the darkness that had consumed her life. Clare instinctively grasped the rough hand. Even now, she couldn't quite believe she was still alive. But the prince hadn't left yet. He spoke again, his words a chilling afterthought. But don't forget, he said, his voice laced with malice. On her 18th birthday, her head must be delivered to me. In the capital of the Speaker Kingdom, the man in black, now Duke Maximilian, sat wearily in his study. Suddenly, a voice called from beyond the door. Your Excellency, Assistant Quentin has arrived. Marion granted permission for Quentin to enter. Quentin bowed deeply. Congratulations on your triumphant return, Duke Maximilian. His Majesty seemed displeased. He didn't attend the celebratory banquet and has already returned to Sedan. Marion replied, the banquet is over, and Sedan cannot be left unattended for long. Is that what you came to tell me? No, actually, Quentin said quickly. I came to discuss a different matter. I heard you're bringing the ghost guy princess to Sedan. Suddenly, Quentin clasped his hands behind his back, his posture shifting to one of profound seriousness. I'll be blunt, he declared. I object to bringing the princess here. Marion, intrigued, asked for his reasoning. How do you intend to raise that child in Sedan? Quentin countered, his voice laced with anxiety. Marion stroked his chin, his tone casual. I don't see the problem. Do you think Sedan lacks the funds or manpower to raise such a small child? Quentin's expression was unreadable, but a thought seemed to strike him like lightning. He slammed his hand on the desk, his voice rising in frustration, forgetting all decorum. Oh, this is infuriating. That's not what I meant, Your Excellency. Listen, while you may be unaware, that child is incredibly cute, exceedingly, remarkably cute. Utterly bewildered, Marion asked the question that made Quentin want to jump into a well. So, what's the problem with that? Defeated, Quentin could only cry out in exasperation. If you raise such an adorable child for years, you'll naturally develop feelings for her. That sweet child, feeding her, putting her to sleep, watching her grow day by day, cherishing her like an uncle. Can you truly kill a child you've cared for so deeply on her 18th birthday? Sever her head and present it to His Majesty? I certainly couldn't, but Marion remained unmoved, dismissing Quentin's concerns. Feelings? Preposterous. The princess is a war criminal. She lives only because of SBI law. Even a war criminal can't change anything. Everyone in Sedan will love that child. Love? Nonsense, Marion retorted coldly. That child is dangerous, a potential spark that could reignite the kingdom. Because of her existence. Quentin was speechless, unsure how to respond. He clenched his fists, posing one final question. So, Your Excellency, after raising that child yourself, can you truly kill her on her 18th birthday? Unfazed, Marian answered with unwavering certainty. 100% yes. Seeing the futility of his argument, Quentin adjusted his glasses and sighed. Good heavens, it would be better to kill the princess now. Suddenly, small feet padded into the room. Overhearing Quentin's words, whoever it was dropped the bag they were carrying. It was Clare. Overhearing the conversation about her own fate was a chilling coincidence. The little girl was terrified, her eyes wide with fear, tears welling up. She trembled, fearing she was about to be reunited with her family in death. Startled by Clare's sudden appearance, Quentin clapped a hand over his mouth, but it was too late. Marian, equally surprised, asked, "Princess, why are you here?" Ever the well-behaved child, Clare immediately dropped to her knees, fear evident in her voice. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I came because I have something to say." Picking up her dropped bag with trembling hands, she spoke earnestly. "Sir, the one with the glasses, I'll remain silent, as if I wasn't even here. Truly, I won't disturb the Duke." To Quentin, Clare looked utterly pitiful as she whispered, her voice full of sincerity. "Sir, could you please reconsider?" The sight was like an atomic bomb detonating in the heart of a man who loved children. Like Quentin, Marian wearily shook his head, pacing the room and sighing. Good heavens! Quentin turned to leave, his frustration evident. "I don't know, Your Excellency. Do as you see fit, but I've warned you. This won't work." Poor Clare remained seated, despondent. Marian looked at the girl, his thoughts churning. This is Clare Leningoski, the bastard child. Her demeanor suggested she hadn't been treated well by the royals in the Old Kingdom. But even so, it didn't change the fact that she was royalty. The sights I witnessed in Grezekaiah during the military operation were horrific. A village ravaged by continuous crop failures, children starving and sick in the streets, soldiers begging the enemy for food. It seems they didn't care at all. Even the aristocracy indulged in luxury and pleasure. I have no intention of sympathizing with the princess of such a decaying kingdom. Snapping out of his reverie, Marian walked towards Clare. "Let me make myself clear. I will kill you on your 18th birthday." Clare, her face grim, seemed to have finally grasped her situation, unable to speak. Marian exhaled, thinking, I can picture that expression. Perhaps she's begging for mercy. But what happened next was unexpected. Clare, her eyes shining with an almost eager light, asked, "Really? You'll really let me live until I'm 18? The girl visibly relaxed, rising to her feet and giving a small curtsy. Thank goodness. I thought the Duke had changed his mind. Seeing Marian's surprised expression, she explained, "Well, actually, I've always been prepared for this because someone like me can't live long. My brother always said the first thing he'd do when he ascended the throne was to get rid of the bastard." Marian watched, stunned, as the girl continued. Clare beamed at him. "My brother said he'd kill me before I turned 12, but thanks to you, Duke, I can live until I'm 18. So I really want to thank you, truly thank you, Duke. You're my savior." The next day, a carriage traversed the forest. Inside sat Quentin, gazing out the window, his expression a mixture of awkwardness and discomfort. Opposite him sat Clare, the sweet girl, staring intently at him. Unbeknownst to Clare, Quentin was internally screaming for help. Before their departure for Sedan, Marian had asked all the knights, "Is there anyone willing to take on the responsibility of protecting the princess?" He was met with only avoidance, each knight offering the most reasonable-sounding excuses they could muster. "I will stay by the esteemed Duke's side," or "I've never ridden in a carriage before." Quentin, well aware of their true motives, sneered inwardly. "You can make excuses for yourselves, but are you all that averse to children?" A second later, Marian had declared something that made Quentin's blood run cold. "Then there's no choice. Quentin will take on the responsibility of protecting the princess. Didn't you say you liked children?" Back in the present, Quentin wept internally, instantly burdened with a heavy task. As expected, the Duke is the most forgiving person. How can I be with a child he intends to kill on her 18th birthday? He tried a subtly glance at Clare's reaction. All this while, the girl had been staring intently at Quentin. Feigning a cough to break the awkward silence, he said casually, "Oh dear, is there dust in the carriage?" "Ahem, I can't speak properly. I'm afraid the dust will fly in." "Ahem, why is there so much dust?" Suddenly, Clare spoke. I'm sorry, sir. It might be because of me because I'm dirty. Claire's unintentional words instantly froze them both. Quentin's face was a picture of misery. Moments later, he pleaded earnestly with Marian, I can't do this. Please have someone else do it. But all he received in response to his plea was a single glance from Marian. Quentin could only cry out in despair. Don't ignore me, Duke. Try to understand, just this once. Inside the quiet carriage, they hadn't spoken a word for hours. Marian finally broke the silence. You haven't said a word? I thought you were going to explain life in Sedan to the girl. Quentin sighed. No, I intended to, but she's been staring at me the entire time. How could I tell her they'll treat her like a criminal in Sedan, not like a princess? Watching Quentin sigh, Marian asked indifferently, anything else you wanted to say? Quentin adjusted his glasses, his mind racing. All right, once we arrive in Sedan, we need to discard all things Gosky. Marian, seated beside him, gestured for him to continue. As if losing control, a sudden intensity gripped Quentin. He launched into a theatrical villainous act, booming, don't forget you're a war criminal. From now on, you'll live quietly. Birthday parties are strictly prohibited. You know the reason better than anyone, don't you? He then turned back to Marian, his voice dropping. Wasn't that a bit much? Marian nodded, seemingly satisfied. I see. You heard that, Clare Leningosky. Unbeknownst to them, Clare stood just behind Quentin, having heard every word. Marian walked over to the girl, emphasizing his points. Let me confirm. You will not be treated as a princess. All your belongings have been discarded. Birthday parties are forbidden. Will you abide by these 3 rules? To everyone's surprise, Clare spoke softly. I've never thought of myself as a princess, and I've never had a birthday party. I've always lived as if I didn't exist. It's always been like this. Anxious, Clare pulled a small pouch from her clothes, holding it out for them to see. Her voice trembled. So just one thing. Please allow me to keep this child. Marian stared at the small pouch in Clare's hand, his voice cold. I must remind you, prisoners are not permitted personal possessions. Clare opened the pouch. This isn't a possession. It's this child. To their surprise, the pouch contained only stones she had collected along the way. With an innocent expression, Clare insisted it was her friend. Quentin nudged Marian with his elbow, teasing, the Duke doesn't have friends, so he wouldn't understand, right? It's someone who shares friendship. Before Marian could speak, Quentin rushed forward, answering for him. If it's someone who shares friendship, they can stay in Sedan as long as the generous Duke permits it. Huh? Seeing Marian's darkening expression, Quentin quickly covered his mouth, whispering, Your Excellency, this is too harsh. It's just a stone. Do you really have to take it from a child? Look at those innocent, eager eyes. Marian glanced at Quentin's arm. Indeed, Clare's eyes were full of anticipation. Knowing he had no choice, the Duke sighed, crouching down in front of Clare and extending his hand. Let me see. He held the stones, turning them over in his hand. What are their names? Clare answered quickly. They're called marshmallow. Patiently, Marian asked, so, the first one is marshmallow, the second one is marshmallow, and the last one is also marshmallow, correct? Of course, this was entirely wrong. Clare quickly corrected him. No, that's not right. All 6 of them together are one marshmallow. Marian and Clare bent down, staring intently at her little companions. Suddenly, he said something that stunned all the surrounding knights. I apologize for calling your name wrong. Holding the stones, Marian spoke earnestly. Marshmallow, as Clare's friend, I permit you to join us in Sedan. But remember, no birthday parties, no loud noises, and be careful. Clever Clare understood these words were meant for her. Her eyes sparkled, and she answered loudly, yes. Marian quickly returned marshmallow to the girl, then turned and said, now, let's get back in the carriage. Looking happily at her friends in her hand, the girl thought to herself, thank goodness. The Duke really is a good person. As they walked, Marian instructed Quentin, continue to protect the victim until we reach Sedan, the northern border of the Speaker Kingdom. All the townspeople who saw Marian erupted in cheers. The Duke has returned from the war. We've been waiting for you, Duke. Clare witnessed this firsthand, her heart swelling with admiration. Wow, she thought, everyone welcomes the Duke, just like Uncle Quentin said. Noticing Clare's awe, Quentin began to tell her stories of Duke Marian. As his title suggests, he's a perfect man. Speaking of our Duke, he's the best swordsman in Speaka. He possesses an extraordinary mind, knowledgeable in almost everything, not to mention his royal lineage. There's no one who doesn't know the Duke. Although he was once the heir to the throne, his maternal family's influence waned. But that was a matter for the older generation. He's such a perfect man. The ladies of the capital eagerly pursue him. He truly is admirable. Quentin's eyes shone with pride as he spoke of Duke Maximilian. He transformed impoverished Sedan into a livable place. Clare, her curiosity piqued, asked, "I heard Sedan is very cold. Is that true?" Quentin immediately launched into an explanation. It's the furthest northern territory from the capital, mostly covered in pure white snow. Since ancient times, monsters have frequently appeared there, hence its name, the Land of Death. He rebuilt the entire northern wall, never sparing any effort in research and supporting the people. He truly is the guardian of the North. Suddenly, Quentin realized he'd become overly enthusiastic. A wall in his mind immediately issued a warning. "Quentin Sinclair, calm down. This child is a criminal. You must maintain a proper distance." Claire's eyes sparkled. "So, you're the Duke's right-hand man, aren't you? You're so talented." With just that one innocent question, the wall in Quentin's mind crumbled. He began to gush. "Talented? Even if it wasn't me, anyone could do it, unless you're someone irreplaceable like the Golem Master." Clare, wondering who the Golem Master was, prompted Quentin to explain further. "You're still young, so you wouldn't know. Simply put, it's a wizard who can bring ordinary stones to life. The golems brought to life become loyal servants, obeying any command. Giant golems can fight against monsters. Sometimes they can even transform into buildings to protect people. A prime example is the Sedan manor where we're going. Of course, now it's just an ordinary manor, as the Golem Master's life force has been severed." Clare gazed intently at the bustling scenery outside. Suddenly, Marion approached the carriage, addressing Quentin. "I need to inspect the northern fortress wall. It will take about 3 days, so you go back and rest first." Quentin's jaw dropped in surprise. "You just returned. Aren't you going to rest immediately?" Marion climbed onto the carriage. "I've been away from Sedan for too long because of the war. We can't let our guard down during the winter when monsters are rampant." It made sense. Quentin nodded in agreement. Knowing he couldn't dissuade the Duke, he said reluctantly, "I understand, but please come back as soon as possible. You promised a banquet upon your return." Marion replied seriously, "I know. You'll continue to guard the prisoner." Quentin immediately interrupted. "That's impossible. How can I take the girl's belongings from the manor? That's entirely the Duchess's authority." The Duke suddenly realized the issue. He compromised. "I understand." Then informed the Duchess that the girl will be under her care for the time being. "I'm going north." Watching Marion depart, Quentin called out sadly, "Please be careful." At Sedan Palace, Quentin carefully instructed Clare, "From now on, only use the servant stairs. The main staircase is exclusively for the Duke's family, and only those permitted may use it." With that, he started climbing the stairs. A thought struck Quentin, but these stairs seem a bit too high for a child. He'd barely finished speaking when he turned to see Clare tumbling down the stairs. Quentin gasped, "Goodness, are you all right? Did you hurt yourself anywhere?" Despite the painful fall, Clare put on a bright smile and said she was fine. Worried she might be cold, Quentin dressed Clare in adult clothes. Swimming in the comically oversized garments, Clare mumbled, "It's a little hard to move in these." After a moment, opting for practicality, Clare simply wrapped herself in a blanket, and the two began to ascend the stairs. Quentin turned to Clare. "You must greet the Duchess first. You know basic etiquette, right?" Clare responded meekly, "Yes," but her eyes held a distant, sorrowful look. "Etiquette?" she thought. "The etiquette the Queen taught me. Even those of low birth must not be impolite." A sudden wave of fear washed over her. The Duchess isn't the Queen. If I make a mistake, will I be scolded? We'll be like that time. Lost in thought, Clare's attention was suddenly captured by something shimmering. Gazing at the luminous wall, she murmured, "Starstones." Clare's whisper caught Quentin's attention. He turned back to explain. "You mean this wall?" "Oh, yes, this is the manor I mentioned in the carriage. It was built by golems. Compared to the palace, it's quite rough and not as beautiful, is it?" Contrary to Quentin's expectations, Clare was utterly captivated. With a radiant smile, she replied, "No, it's friendly. It's beautiful." Quentin looked at her, puzzled, unsure why she would describe a wall as friendly. Suddenly, a gentle voice broke through, drawing Quentin's attention away from Clare. It was Bessie, the Duchess's personal maid. "Perfect timing," Quentin said to Bessie. "Is the Duchess in her chambers?" Bessie replied immediately, "Yes, the Duchess is resting in her room." Bessie couldn't help but place her hands on her hips and scold Quentin. "Do you know how heartbroken the Duchess is? How could the Duke leave without even seeing his wife?" Quentin could only offer an awkward chuckle. "He'll be back in 3 days, so don't be like that." Bessie pressed him. "Then what are you doing here seeking the Duchess?" At that moment, Quentin turned to Clare, calling out, "Oh, right, come here, child." He gestured towards her with a flourish. "This is the child from the ghost realm. I'd like to entrust her to the Duchess's care." Extremely nervous, Clare offered a polite curtsy. "Hello," she said loudly. Bessie didn't seem particularly welcoming. She gave Clare a cool once-over. This child, before meeting the Duchess, it would be best if she had a bath. In this state, Clare, having lived a less-than-privileged life, was acutely sensitive to such remarks. She looked down, a flicker of embarrassment crossing her face. Quentin, flustered, offered a nervous laugh to Bessie. "Haha, we haven't had a chance to bathe after the long journey. May I entrust the child to you?" Bessie, already prepared, readily agreed. Quentin addressed Clare. "Did you hear that, child? Follow Bessie now." A moment later, Clare obediently trailed behind the woman. Looking around, she asked curiously, "Is the bathroom usually here?" Bessie opened a door, revealing a pitch-black room. "Go in," she said coldly. Like a well-trained puppy, Clare obediently stepped inside. Whatever Clare saw within caused her eyes to widen in shock. The sight that greeted her was chilling, a room draped with a horrifying profusion of cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. A cold sweat broke out on Clare's skin. Bessie was already standing behind the small girl, her gaze sharp and severe. "From now on," she said, her voice hard, "you must truthfully answer everything I ask." Before Clare could react, Bessie stepped closer, her interrogation beginning in earnest. "You returned from the ghost realm with the Duke, correct? Was there a woman accompanying the Duke?" Clare stared at Bessie, bewildered, unsure why she was being asked this. The little girl stammered for a moment before replying. "There were many swordsmen with him." Within a heartbeat, Bessie snapped, her voice sharp. "How annoying. Do you not understand what I'm asking? Listen carefully. What I want to know is if there was a mature woman, not a knight, who has a special relationship with the Duke. This is the Duchess's order, so you must answer truthfully. You don't want to be scolded on your first day, do you?" At Bessie's words, a chill snaked down Clare's spine. Sweat prickled on her skin, and her heart felt as though 100 ants were scrambling inside. "What do I do?" A woman with a special relationship with the Duke. On the journey here, there had only been the knights and Uncle Quentin, but the situation dredged up memories of the hellish days with the Queen. A familiar fear began to bloom, whispering that perhaps, just perhaps, a lie would be the best way to avoid a scolding. Bessie's voice, sharp with impatience, cut through Clare's thoughts. "Well, have you thought about it?" Clare trembled, clutching the blanket tighter around herself. The little girl stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Finally, summoning a sliver of courage, she met Bessie's gaze. I can't tell you." Bessie's eyes narrowed, instantly understanding the implication. She shot to her feet. What do you mean you can't tell me? Why can't you tell me?" She pressed a hand to her forehead, muttering furiously under her breath. "Has he silenced her? It must be. Inspecting the northern wall? He's with another woman." Clare, sensing the misunderstanding, stammered. "That's not it. I was in a place where the Duke wasn't. I don't think I should talk about such things. And I don't know if there's been a misunderstanding, but the Duke is a good person, so please don't speak ill of him." Clare's earnest defense only fueled Bessie's rage. Her eyes flashed. "You little brat, brought here as a prisoner of war, and you dare talk back to me?" She raised a hand, poised to strike. Suddenly, voices drifted in from outside the room. Bessie ground her teeth, her hand hovering in the air, unwilling to ruin her image in front of potential witnesses. Slowly, she lowered her hand, but the venom remained in her voice. "Aka me piaka, fine. Since you refuse to speak, there's nothing I can do. I certainly can't take you to see the Duchess now." Clare's eyes widened in alarm. "What? But Uncle Quentin said I had to greet the Duchess." Bessie rounded on the small girl, her voice a harsh bark. "Quiet. A prisoner defying orders and demanding to see the Duchess? How shameless. You should be grateful you're not in the dungeons." Bessie's words plunged Clare back into the familiar, icy grip of fear. She stood frozen, unable to speak. Later, in the Duchess's chambers, the Duchess was enjoying her meal. She suddenly called for Bessie. "I heard a child arrive today, one I'm to look after," she said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "Has she not come yet?" Bessie replied dismissively. "Oh, madam, you needn't concern yourself with that." The Duchess looked at her expectantly, waiting for an explanation. "She may be a child, but she's still a prisoner of war from the defeated nation. Is it appropriate for the Duchess to care for her? I'll handle it, so please don't worry." Pushing her advantage, Bessie continued. "And the Duke, why would he bring that little beast back? You should have just killed her. The Duchess's patience finally snapped. She grabbed Bessie's hand, her voice sharp. How cruel! Where's the child now? Don't tell me you've done something to her. Incredibly, Bessie, a mere servant, flung the Duchess's hand away, a sneer twisting her lips. Let go of me. Just because I treat you like a duchess doesn't mean you actually are one. You imposter. The Duchess stared, utterly stunned. Emboldened, Bessie pointed a finger at her, her voice dripping with scorn. Are you finally awake now? If you have time to worry about some irrelevant child, you should be spending it figuring out how to catch the Duke's eye when he returns. You need to have a child by any means necessary, even if it means forcing him. 3 years. How can you still pretend not to know? If they find out you're a fake before you produce an heir, it's all over. Do you understand? No one knew the struggles the Duchess faced, struggles that allowed even a servant like Bessie to speak to her with such disrespect. The Duchess, her spirit worn thin, managed to quiet, I understand. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, poor Clare sat alone, locked in the dark room. Yet, instead of resentment, guilt gnawed at her. What have I done? She thought miserably. I promised Uncle Quentin. I haven't even greeted the Duchess yet. No, she's right. The Duchess wouldn't want to be around someone like me. How foolish I've been. She berated herself, tricking myself into thinking the Duke and Uncle Quentin were truly kind. I'm a burden. When I turn 18, I should just disappear. Late into the night, a set of footsteps crept softly up the stairs. As Clare slept soundly, Maran, her small companion, suddenly hopped on her hand. A shadowy figure stealthily opened the door to Clare's room, then quickly closed it again, as if afraid of being discovered. Maran, perched on Clare's hand, suddenly sent out a notification. Maran continued to send alerts, but Clare remained unresponsive. The shadowy figure was none other than the beautiful Duchess, Sedan. She gently lifted Clare back on a bed, carefully tucking the blanket around her. No, Ashira murmured to herself. I can't believe I let a child sleep on the cold floor. She glanced around the room, taking in its dilapidated state. Even the cleanliness of the room was subpar. I suppose I should clean this up a bit. After bustling around for a while, Ashura seemed satisfied with her work. There, it's been a long time since I've had a chance to use my skills. A small, pleased smile touched her lips. Ah, that felt good. Ashura fetched some bread from the kitchen and placed it on the table for Clare. Gazing at the innocent face of the sleeping child, she couldn't resist gently stroking Clare's small head. I'm sorry, she whispered. I want to get you out of this room now, but I'm just a duchess in name only. The girl suddenly stirred in her sleep, startling Ashura. She quickly stood up, melting back into the shadows as she retreated. I almost woke her. I need to get out of here. As she walked down the hallway, Ashira's thoughts churned. I can't let her continue living in these conditions, but what can I do? Even if I told Bessie, she wouldn't listen. Suddenly, Ashira heard suspicious footsteps behind her. She turned, her senses on high alert. It was Marion. He should be in the north. Why is he at Sedan Manor? He shouldn't catch me sneaking around. Naturally, Marion's sudden appearance startled Ashira. Her eyes widened in surprise. Marion, equally surprised to see his wife, quickly raised his hands in explanation. I apologize. I saw a suspicious figure up ahead. He didn't realize the suspicious figure he spoke of was his own wife. Ashira, flustered, managed an awkward laugh. No, it's just a misunderstanding. Regaining her composure, Ashira asked curiously, but why are you here? I heard you wouldn't be back for another 3 days. He replied calmly. I returned after confirming there were no issues at the northern wall. This manor shouldn't be left unattended for too long. A brief, awkward silence settled between them after their exchange. Marion looked at his wife, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. What are you doing here so late? The simple question made Ashira's heart skip a beat. Here it is, she thought, her insides trembling. The unavoidable question. She stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. How do I explain this? She panicked. Of all people, it's the Duke himself who caught me. Suddenly, Ashira's expression shifted. No, she thought, on the contrary, this might actually be a good thing. With newfound resolve, she looked at her husband, her gaze sincere. Duke, she said softly, I need your help. Marion was taken aback by the unfamiliar look in his wife's eyes. It was an expression he hadn't seen since their marriage. Soon morning arrived. Clare slept soundly, only to be repeatedly roused by Marangi's insistent nudges. Groggily, she sat up, murmuring, Why do you keep waking me? I want to sleep more. Suddenly, a sense of something amiss settled over her. she quieted, her eyes scanning her surroundings. They widened in astonishment. Clare had no recollection of the previous night. Everything had changed while she slept. "What happened?" she exclaimed, her voice laced with wonder. "The room is so clean, like a fairy came through here." Turning to her companion, she asked, "Morangi, what happened last night? You know, don't you?" Morangi's response left Clare utterly speechless. "What?" she gasped. "The Duchess did all this and then left? No way. She's supposed to be a scary person." "No, I don't mean you're lying." Her gaze fell upon a tray of bread and milk left on the table. "Should I eat this?" she whispered, eyeing it hesitantly. But what child could resist such a tempting sight? With a flicker of uncertainty, she picked up a piece and took a small bite. The taste exploded on her tongue, and a second later, a joyful cry escaped her lips. "It's delicious. I want more." In that moment, a wave of guilt washed over her. Tears welled in her eyes as she silently apologized. "Duchess Ashura, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought you were a scary person." Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. It was Bessie. A smug smirk played on her lips. "Now she'll know her place," she thought. "Children are always like this," she mused. "They need a good scolding to learn their lesson." It'll be amusing to see her beg. But contrary to her expectations, when she opened the door, it wasn't the sound of crying that greeted her, but Clare's cheerful laughter. Bessie stared dumbfounded. Her eyes widened in disbelief. There, before her, Clare lay happily on the bed, laughing with Morangi, the room noticeably warmer and cleaner. This was not how things were supposed to go. Fury ignited within her. "Tisk," she spat, her teeth grinding together. "That little rat." At the sound of Bessie's voice, Clare jumped. She quickly hid Morangi behind her back as Bessie, hands planted firmly on her hips, sneered, Well, look at you, living the high life. Haven't even earned your keep and already stealing like a little rat." Clare's hurried movement hadn't gone unnoticed. "Wait a minute," Bessie demanded. "What are you hiding back there?" She took a step closer, her voice accusatory. "You must have stolen something again, judging by how you're stammering. Hand it over so I can inspect it." A surge of defiance hardened Clare's resolve. "No," she cried desperately. Fear pulsed through her, but her grip tightened. "No, I can't lose Morangi." But Bessie wasn't one to back down easily. Limping forward, she barked, "You unruly brat. When I say hand it over, you hand it over." The sight of the approaching maid only amplified Clare's terror. "No," she insisted, clutching Morangi tighter. "This is my important friend." Clare's desperate resistance only fueled Bessie's rage. With a stinging slap, she snarled, "You little wretch." Ignoring Clare's whimpers, Bessie snatched the bag from her grasp. A sneer curled her lip as she examined the stone within. "And what precious treasure did you think you had? Just a rock. Making such a fuss over this." Without a second thought, Bessie flung the bag, along with Morangi, out the window. A triumphant laugh erupted from her. "How about that? Your important friend is gone." Clare's heart shattered. Tears streamed down her face as Bessie continued to berate her, acting like a thief over a rock. "If you had just listened, none of this would have happened, would it?" To make matters worse, Bessie's next words sent a shiver of fear down Clare's spine, causing her to clutch her blanket tighter. "Just you wait," Bessie threatened. "You've made a grave mistake, and the Duke will punish you." Just then, a cold voice cut through the air from behind Bessie. "Punish who?" It was Marian, his face impassive, his eyes fixed on her with an impatient glare. The Duke's voice behind her made Bessie jump. She froze, utterly stunned. Marian was back, far earlier than expected. "Your Grace," she stammered, her composure crumbling. "What are you doing here? You weren't due back for 3 days." In stark contrast to her Huanglan, Marian's voice remained glacial. "Answer my question first. Who did you say you were going to punish? Shall I ask again?" Bessie, bowing deeply, hastily fabricated a story. "This girl was using the manor's belongings without permission, Your Grace, so I was disciplining her. I may have been a bit harsh, but it was for the good of the manor and the child." Marian cut her off, his words laced with ice. "Does the law seem like a child's game to you? That child must grow up healthy until she's 18. And this," he gestured towards Clare, "is what you call discipline." Fury simmered in Marian's eyes. "If something were to happen to her, would you offer your life in her place?" he demanded. Bessie, drenched in a cold sweat, stammered, "And no, Your Grace, that's not what I meant." Unable to defend herself, she desperately deflected the blame. "The Duchess instructed me, Your Grace. I had no choice." A sudden silence fell over Marian. He recalled the earnest plea in Ashira's eyes when she'd asked him to look after Clare. His expression darkened. "Not only did you defy the law," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "but now you dare to blame your mistress? Confine her to the dungeon," Marian declared coldly, sealing Bessie's fate. The maid, so arrogant just moments ago, was now a trembling, sweat-soaked criminal. The gravity of the situation only hit Bessie as she was being dragged away. "Your Grace, I know I was wrong. Please have mercy," she shrieked. But her cries were met with silence. Having dealt with the troublemaker, Marian turned to Clare. "You," he said, his voice softening slightly. "Come here." Hearing her name, Clare quickly looked up. Marian said nothing more, turned to leave. "Wait here," he instructed over his shoulder. "I'll call for you later." Seeing him about to depart, Clare blurted out, "Uncle." He paused, noticing the hesitation in her voice, and looked back at her curiously. Clare stammered, struggling to get the words out. Miranji, my friend." Suddenly, Bessie's actions and words flashed through her mind. "It must be cold out there. If I want to bring him in, I need permission. But what if I get in trouble again?" Bessie's cruel words had left Clare feeling even more vulnerable. Dejectedly, she mumbled, "It's nothing. I'm sorry." Marian, perceptive as he was, likely already guessed what Clare wanted to say. Left alone in the room, Clare's thoughts raced. But why did the Duke say he would call for me? He seemed angry. Maybe I'm going to be sent away too. The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became, convinced it was true. What if he said he'd kill me right away? Just then, the butler entered the room, informing Clare that the Duke wished to see her. Clare fought to control her emotions, though her entire body trembled with anxiety. "Stay calm," she told herself. A while later, in the bathroom, a maid carefully bathed Clare, asking kindly, "Is the water temperature all right?" "Yes, it's warm," Clare replied politely. The maid smiled gently. "It's a little late for introductions, but my name is Rosalie. Can you tell me your name?" "I'm Clare Lennon Sky," Clare answered, a flicker of happiness in her voice. "What a beautiful name," Rosalie exclaimed. "It suits your pink hair perfectly." At these words, Clare suddenly fell silent. "But I don't like my hair being pink," she murmured. "It doesn't suit me, even though it stands out. I wish I had shiny golden hair." The spiteful words of countless manor servants echoed in Clare's ears. The princess is the only one without golden hair. What a disgrace. If you get more sun, maybe your hair will turn gold. So don't even think about going inside the palace. Just stay outside. Rosalie's voice suddenly pulled her back to reality. "Now let me see. I think I still prefer pink hair over golden hair. Cute and warm. This color reflects Clare's gentleness. There's no better color than this." Seeing the girl remain silent, Rosalie worriedly asked Clare, "What's wrong?" Clare shyly replied, "Miss Rosalie, you're such a flatterer, just like the queen." A moment later, for some reason, Rosalie gasped, covering her mouth. "I can't believe it." After Clare was all dressed up, Rosalie couldn't contain herself. Clare looked utterly adorable. "So cute," she exclaimed. However, Clare didn't seem very happy with her new look. She anxiously asked Rosalie, "Thank you, but will the Duke be angry if I dress like this?" Rosalie quickly reassured the girl. "Oh my, no. The one who ordered you to be dressed nicely was." Before she could finish her sentence, Marian appeared as if from nowhere, interrupting Rosalie. "Are you done?" he asked. His sudden appearance startled Clare. Marian bent down and observed Clare for a moment, then seriously concluded, "Aren't these clothes a bit too thin?" Rosalie gave an awkward smile and quickly explained, "This is all I could find for now. I'll order thicker clothes today." Marian didn't say anything more. He turned to Clare and said, "Come, follow me." He pointed to a room filled with lovely shades of pink. "From now on, this is your room," he told the girl. Clare's eyes widened, her face beaming as she took in the lovely room. She could hardly believe her eyes. Pointing at herself, she asked the Duke innocently, "Aren't you going to execute the Lord today? Is this really my room?" Marian had no idea what Claire was talking about. He asked in return, "What are you talking about?" "You'll be staying in this room until you turn 18. Is there a problem?" Startled by his question, Claire quickly replied, "No, no problem at all." To avoid embarrassing Claire further, Marian didn't say anything more. Suddenly, he asked Claire to hold out her hand. The bag of meringue cookies that Bessie had thrown away was now being handed back to her by Marian himself. Overjoyed, Claire exclaimed, "Meringue cookies!" Marian crouched down in front of Claire and explained, "I found it downstairs. My servant was very rude to you. I apologize on their behalf." Claire's feelings at that moment were beyond words. Hugging the bag of meringue cookies, she exclaimed, "Thank you so much." Unexpectedly, Marian returned to the main topic. "So," he asked, "what do you think of this room?" Clare replied, "This room is more than enough for me." Suddenly, Marian said something rather cryptic. "Think about its essence." Seeing Clare's confused expression, Marian began to elaborate. "First, this place is on the second floor, so it prevents you from escaping through the window. A good room brings psychological stability, prevents rebellion, and keeps you warm, preventing colds. In other words, this room is a perfect prison for detaining criminals." The more Clare listened, the more she admired him, silently marveling, so insightful, truly ducal. Meanwhile, Marian walked over to her bed and assessed it. "It's better to change to a lighter blanket. It would be troublesome if you were crushed by it before you turn 18. This statement, however, made Clare even more dubious. "No, I want to say that's a bit much, but I'll try to hold back," she sighed inwardly. Soon, dusk fell, and Clare lay wearily on the soft mattress. Listlessly, she thought, "I thought we were going to look at the room, but I ended up doing more than I expected. Although I'm a bit tired, I'm really happy. The Duchess, Miss Rosalie, and even the Duke, they were all so kind." Suddenly, Clare bolted upright, a newfound determination hardening her soft features. "I've decided," she declared to the empty room, "I'm going to become the most amazing 18-year-old in the world, so no one will feel ashamed for being kind to me." Having made this vow, Clare reached for the bag of meringue cookies. She gently kissed her companion. A miracle unfolded before her eyes. A brilliant blue light shimmered in the air. "Can you help me, Morangi?" she whispered. The moment Clare's lips touched the seemingly inanimate stone, it began to shift and coalesce. Smaller stones gathered around it, forming a larger, humanoid shape complete with limbs. It was truly magical. "How can I help you?" Morangi asked Clare. Immediately, Clare leaned in and whispered into Morangi's ear, "You know, there might be many special stones in this manor. So, Morangi, could you ask the stones here about Sedan?" Morangi tilted his head, curiosity coloring his voice. "Why would you do that?" he inquired. A radiant, almost impossibly happy smile bloomed on Clare's face. "Morangi," she replied, her voice brimming with hope, "maybe Sedan will gradually get better." The next day, Sedan Manor was alive with the vibrant energy of a festival. Clare watched the festivities from her room, a wistful expression on her face. Suddenly, a voice startled her. "Are you still watching the festival?" Surprised, Clare turned to see Morangi standing beside her. "Where were you?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Morangi replied casually, "Where else? Didn't you ask me to go ask the stones in the manor a few days ago?" Clare thanked Morangi, then fell silent, her gaze drifting back to the window, a melancholic shadow passing over her features. Morangi, noticing her downcast mood, offered a gentle consolation. "It must be lonely being alone like this. It would be nice if you could join the festival." Clare offered a weak smile. "No," she replied. "That festival is to commemorate the defeat of the monsters. If I were there, no one would be able to enjoy themselves fully. Still, it's a little enviable. I've never been to a festival or a party." Seeing Clare's sadness, Morangi felt a pang of sympathy. Then he offered, "Would you like to dance with me?" The unexpected invitation caught Clare off guard. "Dance with you?" she echoed, surprised. A mischievous glint entered her eyes as a teasing smile played on her lips. "What? Do I look that small to you?" The unintended jab hit a nerve. Morangi sulked, turning away slightly. "If you don't like it, then forget it," he mumbled. Realizing she had gone too far, Clare offered a conciliatory smile. "Oh no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have laughed," she said, her voice softening. "Please, dance with me, Prince Morangi." Excitement bubbling up inside her, Clare scooped Morangi up and held him aloft. "Dance with me, Morangi," she cried. To her surprise, Morangi began to spin like a top, making Clare dizzy with laughter. It had been a long time since Clare had felt this carefree and joyful. She and Morangi danced to the distant music of the festival, their own little celebration echoing the merriment outside. At the festival, everyone was reveling in the victory over the monsters, all except Ashura, whose face remained impassive. Perhaps she was dealing with matters she couldn't share with anyone. Suddenly, she excused herself, turning to the man she was conversing with. "I'll be out for a bit," she said. "Apologies, we can talk later." He couldn't resist a parting comment. "You're like a block of ice," he remarked. Unbeknownst to him, Marian had been standing nearby, overhearing every word. Ashura stepped onto the balcony, drawing a deep breath of the cool night air. Looking up at the moon, she thought it's hard to shake off. This position doesn't suit me at all. Since it's business, these things are difficult to handle. I've been trying to avoid it, but it's too cold out here. Suddenly, a coat was draped over her shoulders. Marian had followed her out onto the balcony, his presence a quiet comfort. "It really is cold," he said softly. Surprised, Ashura turned to face him. "If you're uncomfortable, you can go inside," Marian continued. Ashura smoothed back her hair, a blush warming her cheeks. "No," she replied, a hint of shyness in her voice. "I just felt a bit tipsy and was about to head back in." "Is that so?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "What brings the Duke out here as well? Is there something you wanted to say to me?" Faced with her question, Marian hesitated. Suddenly, he turned around. "No, I apologize for disturbing you. I'll be going now." Just as he began to leave, Ashura called out, "Wait, Your Grace. I heard you took care of the child situation. Thank you very much." She bowed deeply, a full 90 degrees, and spoke with genuine sincerity. "I sincerely apologize. I failed to fulfill the task Your Grace entrusted to me, and even my servant committed a grave error. This is entirely my responsibility." Marian was taken aback by the Duchess's sudden humility. He paused, momentarily speechless. After a moment of contemplation, he replied, "It's not your fault. Please, raise your head. The servant will be dealt with according to the law." However, his thoughts were conflicted. "I didn't come here for this," he mused. "I need to ask about that report. After arresting the servant, I checked the bag and found a suspicious report. While it didn't record anything about me, the Duchess's every move was meticulously documented. I have to ask her what that report is about." As Marian wrestled with his internal dilemma, Ashura spoke, her voice tentative. "Your Grace," she began, "I was wondering if it would be possible to keep this matter hidden from the Earl's family. I don't mean forever, just for a short time. Even a brief period would be enough." Seeing Marian's prolonged silence, she continued, her voice laced with dejection. "As expected, this is too much to ask. I apologize." Silently, she berated herself. How shameless of me, as if His Grace would agree to such a request. To her surprise, however, Marian responded, "Just for a short time. Everyone will find out eventually, even if it goes against protocol." "It's all right." Ashura couldn't contain her joy. A radiant smile illuminated her face as she replied, "Thank you so much, Your Grace." Her beauty in that moment, so vibrant and unguarded, caught Marian's attention. He found himself unable to look away. Moments later, the Duke and Benson walked along the corridor, the stunning image of the Duchess's expression still lingering in Marian's mind. "Could it be love that makes my heart ache?" Marian mused, unconsciously leaning against a nearby wall. Benson, noticing Marian's unusual expression, immediately asked with concern, "Are you all right, Your Grace? Is something wrong?" Of course, Marian didn't reveal the truth. Flushing slightly, he replied, "No, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong, so don't worry." Suddenly, something in front of Benson caught his attention. He immediately reported to Marian, "Your Grace, up ahead, isn't that the monster child's room? Why is the door still open so late?" Marian's expression instantly changed. Gripping the sword at his side, he prepared for a confrontation as he walked towards Clare's room. Could there be an intruder? He wondered. The two hurried forward. Without hesitation, Marian flung open the door to Clare's room. Before them lay the small girl, sprawled out on the floor. "What's wrong with the poor child now?" Benson rushed over and scooped Clare into his arms. But after observing her for a moment, he realized something was amiss. Benson breathed a sigh of relief. "Ah, she's just asleep." Marian approached, asking, "What happened?" Benson quickly reported, "Nothing, sir. It seems she fell asleep playing with stones." Benson carefully placed Clare back in her bed, muttering to himself, "Why would she be playing with stones?" He sighed. "Well, she's probably bored, since she's been cooped up in her room for days now, still recovering ever since she came here. She'll be more lively once she wakes up." The perceptive. Marian immediately understood Benson's implication. "So you're suggesting the child needs some outdoor activity as well?" he asked. Seeing that the Duke understood, Benson nodded enthusiastically in agreement. Watching Clare sleep soundly, Marian fell into silent contemplation, perhaps pondering something in his mind. The next day, Rosalie carefully dressed Clare. Once finished, she said cheerfully, "All right, now let's go outside." Clare, suddenly feeling a little nervous, replied loudly, "Okay." Marian and Quentin had arrived unnoticed. Dressed in warm winter clothes, the small girl looked utterly adorable. She looked up, her bright eyes shining, and softly said, "I'm ready." Quentin was flustered by Clare's undeniable cuteness. He looked her over, thinking, round and plump, so adorable. Is she a rabbit? No, a snow rabbit. Suddenly, he felt a chill down his spine. Quentin snapped back to reality. This wasn't the time to be charmed. He regained his composure and said, "We are grateful to the Duke for providing these warm clothes for the prisoner." He recalled Marian's entirely unreasonable, yet somehow persuasive words. The Duke had declared, "This is urgent. Summon all the tailors from the nearby villages." Quentin continued, "We must thank the tailors for coming all this way to make clothes for this prisoner." Upon hearing Quentin's words, Clare politely bowed to Marian. "Thank you for the warm prison clothes, sir." Marian told her, "The clothes are ready, so starting today, you can go outside. All prisoners must participate in a certain amount of outdoor activity to improve their health and mental state. You are no exception." Hearing this, Clare eagerly replied, "Okay, I'll go out and get stronger." Her next question caught Marian off guard. But what are we supposed to do outside? This proved to be a difficult question for someone like Marian, who had only ever been trained in swordsmanship since childhood. He immediately looked to Quentin for help. Quentin hesitantly offered, "When I was young, I used to catch insects or frogs." Marian quickly reminded him, "It's winter." Thanks to Marian's casual remark, Quentin seemed to have an answer. He exclaimed excitedly, "When it snows, don't children all enjoy building snowmen? They even have competitions to see who can build the biggest one." Marian, finding this reasonable, looked seriously at Clare and said, "Participate in that competition. Build a snowman on behalf of the manor." Clare froze. The phrase "on behalf of the manor" instilled in her a sense of enormous responsibility. She clenched her fists, thinking, "I'm already going to be doing things for the manor." She replied with determination, "I will do my best for the Duke's honor." Satisfied with her answer, Marian turned to Benson and instructed, "Take this child to the garden." Benson immediately obeyed. "Yes, sir." The two quickly headed towards the garden. Benson followed behind, keeping a close eye on Clare's small figure. He sighed deeply, recalling Marian's instructions, "Treat her like a prisoner." He lamented inwardly, "The Duke truly has a heart of stone. She's just a child." As they reached the top of the stairs, Benson watched Clare carefully descend. Suddenly, he called out to her urgently, "Oh, wait." Benson grumbled impatiently, "Be careful on the stairs. What are we supposed to do if the prisoner gets hurt?" Left with no other choice, he offered, "Let me carry you down." But Clare refused his kindness, saying, "Thank you for your concern, but I'll go down myself." Benson, flushing, simply nodded, letting the matter drop. "Moments latte, Clare gaspat." She couldn't contain her astonishment. "The whole garden is covered in snow." Clare carefully took her first step into the garden. She exclaimed excitedly, "Footprints! Amazing!" Clare, overjoyed, ran around, freely stretching her limbs. But suddenly realizing something was amiss, Clare hesitated. "This isn't the time to play. My first mission from the Duke is to build the biggest and most beautiful snowman on behalf of the manor." Coming from a warmer climate, Clare likely had no idea what a snowman even was. "Well, what should I do? I should have asked that swordsman earlier. Who can I ask now?" Just then, Clare seemed to have an idea. She walked over to the outer wall. Clare carefully peeked her head over the top and softly called out, "Hello." Even more surprisingly, a man's voice responded from beyond the wall. "Are you the criminal they mentioned?" Clare's eyes widened as she looked at the outer wall, and a bright blue light appeared before the little girl. An older man appeared from beyond the wall. He looked sternly at Clare, his arms crossed. The little girl timidly asked, "Outer wall, do you know me?" "This is our first time meeting." The outer wall responded in a rather unfriendly tone. "How could I not know? Ever since you arrived, the people inside the walls have been chattering nonstop." Suddenly, the outer wall leaned closer to Clare, booming, "But don't get me wrong, the Outer Wall Legion is different from them. We have zero tolerance for criminals." The outer wall continued its threats. "If you try to escape." At this, Clare quickly waved her hands in protest. "Escape? I would never do such a thing." The outer wall questioned her. "If you're not planning to escape, then why did you call me?" Clare stammered slightly. She cautiously asked the outer wall, "Do you know how to build a snowman?" The outer wall responded, "A snowman? You call me just for that." Clare answered sincerely, "I have to build a snowman on behalf of the manor, but I don't know how." "You don't know how?" Hearing this, the outer wall couldn't help but grind its teeth. It yelled angrily at Clare, "Don't lump me in with you. Of course I know how. The little girl began to plead. Then please teach me. Please teach me. The outer wall impatiently boomed. You're so noisy. You keep disturbing me. So, I have no choice. Suddenly, it raised both its hands toward the sky. Clare stared, dumbfounded at the sight before her. With a flick of its wrist, the bells on the outer wall began to glow, sparkling with a beautiful light. Clare couldn't help but gasp. So pretty. The bells are glowing. The outer wall laughed triumphantly. Huh, surprised. I'll show you the power of the Outer Wall Legion right now. Listen up, bells that protect the manor. A criminal is wandering around. Ring the bells twice immediately. The bells, obeying the outer wall's command, promptly rang twice. Although it didn't sound quite right, the atmosphere suddenly turned awkward, and both were left speechless. Clare, feeling a wave of dizziness after hearing it, began to doubt reality. Was that the sound I imagined? I thought it would be louder. A conversation between two gatekeepers caught Clare's attention. Did the bell just ring? Don't mind it. It probably malfunctioned again. Those bells are useless anyway. We should just throw all that useless stuff away. Their words didn't escape the outer wall's ears, nor did the unsightly expression on its face escape Clare's notice. She worriedly asked the outer wall, "Are you all right?" The outer wall flew into a rage, so intense that even the birds were startled into flight. "You get back here." The sun rose higher, and Clare collapsed onto the sofa. She looked up at the wall and murmured, "Are you awake?" Within her wall, only a deep silence answered Clare. Suddenly, the familiar blue light appeared again. A small, adorable girl materialized in an instant, curtsying to Clare and asking, "Were you calling me?" After listening to Clare pour out her worries, the inner wall sighed. So that's what happened. It's best not to be too harsh on the outer wall. He's protected Sedan for longer than any human. You could say he's been living on that pride. But as time passed, his magic gradually faded, and now the bells don't even ring properly anymore. The inner wall continued sympathetically, and on top of that, to be considered useless, of course, it's hard. Clare felt a pang of sadness. She understood everything now and told the inner wall. So, that's why. Because of me, everyone has to endure these things. The inner wall consoled her. It's not Clare's fault. But why did you ask him about building a snowman? Oh, that? The Duke told me to build one, to put in front of the manor. The inner wall's eyes sparkled, exclaiming with admiration, "Really? That's wonderful." Placing a snowman in front of the manor signifies that a child has grown up well. Clare pointed at herself questioningly. "You mean me?" The inner wall nodded in agreement. "Of course, who else but you? It's a great event for Sedan Manor. If you build a wonderful snowman, the outer wall will surely be happy too." Thanks to the inner wall's enthusiastic encouragement, Clare's spirits lifted. Her eyes wide, she asked the inner wall, "Really?" The inner wall nodded vigorously. Yes, I'll teach you how. Soon, the next day arrived. Clare sat in the garden, eagerly building her snowman. She puffed out a breath, quickly wiping the sweat from her brow. Finally, her snowman was mostly complete. Clare looked at it critically, assessing her work. "I did what the inner wall said, but did I do it right? It feels like something's missing." She recalled the inner wall's instructions. "You still need to make arms for the snowman. People usually use branches." Clare hurried off to find some. Clare carefully selected the branches most suitable for her snowman. Suddenly, something in front of her caught her attention. At some point, Ashura had appeared before Clare, and she was in the garden outside the manor. The little girl was instantly captivated by the beautiful woman, silently admiring. "So pretty." Ashura also noticed Clare. She accidentally stepped on the little girl's branch. Ashura bent down. "So you were looking for branches. I'm sorry I stepped on it. I'll help you find another one." Clare quickly replied, "It's okay." The little girl stole glances at Ashura, thinking to herself, "Come to think of it, the Duchess is a very beautiful person, with platinum blonde hair and blue eyes." Ashura really does look exactly like the description on the wall. Gathering her courage, Clare looked at Ashura and softly called out, "Duchess, you're the Duchess, aren't you? I'm sorry to disturb you while you're outside." Ashura, surprised by Clare's words, gave an awkward laugh and waved her hand. "No need to apologize." Suddenly, a voice calling Clare's name startled them both. Clare turned towards the sound. It was Benson and Marian. Benson kept calling, "Where are you, Clare?" "Clare," Clare thought. "It's Uncle Benson and the Duke." Worried about being discovered, Ashura gave the little girl a kind smile. "I have to go now. And about today, can we keep this a secret? Just this small thing." Clare readily agreed. She answered firmly, "Okay, I'll definitely keep it a secret." The two parted ways silently, and Clare hurried back to Benson. She quickly came before Marian and reported, "I'm here." The Duke asked, "Where did you go? We were calling you, but you didn't answer." Clare explained, "Oh, that? I was looking for branches to decorate the snowman." Marian turned to Benson and instructed, "If the snowman is done, let's go inside now, Benson. Place the snowman in front of the manor." Clare blinked at Marian, pleading, "Duke, can I stay a little longer?" "Actually, today." The outer wall. Mid-sentence, Clare suddenly fell silent. Her sad past resurfaced, remembering how her brother had mocked her for talking to stones. "Wherever you go, don't talk nonsense. A princess will not only be seen as a fool, but also ridiculed as a lunatic." Thinking that Marian and Benson might also think she was crazy, she swallowed her words and fabricated another reason. She told Marian, "I just want to look at the garden a little longer. I'll bring the snowman over." Marian pondered for a moment, then turned to leave, not forgetting to remind her, "Come back before sunset." With Marian's permission, Clare happily hugged her snowman and ran towards the outer wall. The little girl excitedly imagined the outer wall being happy to see the snowman. Upon arriving, Clare called out, "Outer wall, I want to show you this. Please answer." The outer wall. After a long silence with no response, Clare guessed, could it be asleep? Sometimes Morangi and the inner wall fall asleep too. Maybe I should come back later, but I want to show him the snowman quickly. All right, I'll just do this for Morangi. The little girl gently kissed the outer wall. A mysterious power seemed to be transmitted within the wall. The outer wall appeared swiftly before Clare, still in the posture of sleep. He roused himself groggily, muttering, "What is it? It's not even the full moon yet. Where's all this magic coming from?" Seeing the outer wall, Clare was overjoyed. "Outer wall," she cried excitedly. "Thank goodness you're awake." The outer wall stared at Clare in disbelief, thinking, this little criminal, this child woke me up? Clare, beaming, showed off her snowman to the outer wall. She proudly explained, "The inner wall said you'd be happy if I built a snowman for you." Contrary to Clare's expectations, the outer wall suddenly roared in anger. That inner wall is such a fool. How could he say such a thing to a criminal? Those inner wall fellows are always like that, living in warmth. It's melted away their dignity. Clare, saddened, defended the inner wall. "Don't say that. They help me." The outer wall, still fuming, retorted, "Then go play with those inner fools. I'm telling you, I don't like your snowman. And don't recklessly send your magic to me like that. You can't just go around giving your magic away." Absorbing the outer wall's harsh words, Clare looked utterly dejected. Hearing no reply, the outer wall cracked open an eye, curious. "What's going on?" No reaction. Across from him was Clare's downcast face. The outer wall's reaction seemed to make him realize he'd gone too far. Clare, despondent, whispered, "I'm sorry. I'll go now." With that, Clare hurried away from the outer wall without looking back. The little girl left so hastily, she even left behind her painstakingly built snowman. That night, the outer wall tossed and turned, unable to sleep. He sat on the terrace, gazing out at the panorama of Sedan. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. "It seems you're brimming with magic, aren't you?" The owner of the voice was the inner wall. The outer wall immediately replied, "What is it? You're not asleep yet." The inner wall explained, "I came to check on you before I went to sleep. That magic you received, it was from Clare, wasn't it? I haven't received any yet. So envious. Why should I be envious? It's because of you I can't sleep." The inner wall, brow furrowed, addressed him, "Mr. Outer Wall, please treat Clare kindly. Do you know how much Clare endured today because of you? Even though you care for others, you act cold and unpredictable." Whether or not the inner wall had struck a nerve, the outer wall flushed deeply. He retorted, "I hate humans. They're too fragile and they die young. Is that why you're hesitant to give affection? Clare is truly a miraculous child. Outer wall, you know that, right? We don't have much time left. If we continue like this, we'll soon become ordinary stones." Unexpectedly, the outer wall didn't argue at this. He replied sadly, "It's better than waiting for a master who won't return." Hearing this, the inner wall grew slightly angry. "Outer wall," he exclaimed, "not this again. Don't so readily declare you'll fade away like that. I want to live. No matter what, I want to live a long time, protecting this manor." The outer wall suddenly clamped a hand over the inner wall's mouth. "Quiet," he hissed. "There's a strange shadow down below in the dead of night." Both peered out beyond the wall, adding suspicious. The inner wall, panicked, cried out, An intruder. This is no time for this. We must ring the bells at once. But contrary to the inner wall's worry, the outer wall remained remarkably calm. He questioned, "What are you talking about? Why should I ring the bells? The swordsmen will know what to do on their own." The inner wall, bewildered, asked again, "What is outer wall saying?" "That's her duty as the guardian of this manor." "Quiet!" the outer wall exclaimed in exasperation. "You still don't understand. Our bells are useless now. Even if I ring them, I'll only be ridiculed. I don't want to be the laughingstock of humans anymore." Seeing the outer wall's loss of confidence, the inner wall could only offer encouragement. She said timidly, "Perhaps this time will be different. Clare has bestowed her magic upon you." She was serious. Impossible. How could that child's magic compare to the master's? The inner wall pressed. "So you intend to stand idly by? As the guardian of this manor, do you not feel any shame?" Hearing the inner wall's provocative tone, the outer wall hesitated for a moment. He reluctantly stood up with a sigh. "Fine," he conceded. "I'll do it." The outer wall began to recite the customary phrase. "Oh, bells of the outer wall's guard. There are intruders. Please ring twice immediately." The words spoken, he waited anxiously for the bell's response. He could only offer a wry smile. "See, no matter what this time," he began, but was suddenly interrupted by a loud, proud ringing. The bells emitted a mesmerizing, beautiful green light. The inner wall gasped. "Goodness, how beautiful!" The outer wall stared in awe at the once-in-a-millennium spectacle unfolding before him. He murmured, "The bells emitting such a beautiful light. I never thought I'd see it again." Meanwhile, Marian was in the library. The sound of the bells caught his attention. Quentin heard it too. "The bells rang again," he said. "It must have been a mistake during the day." Marian remained deep in thought as the bells rang twice. One ring signifies an issue within the manor. 3 rings, a problem within the inner city or village. 2 rings near the manor garden indicate intruders or escapees. Marian suddenly stood up, addressing Quentin. "I'll go check myself and return." Quentin, worried, hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Surely nothing will happen. There's no need for you to go out personally, Your Grace. What if something were to—" But Marian was resolute. He instructed Quentin, "There's no need to call the swordsman. I'll just check it out myself and be back." He immediately descended to the garden. He began to analyze the situation. It's currently the front gate patrol shift. If there's an intrusion or escape, the target would be the back garden. Suddenly, something caught his eye. Over there, someone's intruding into the garden. Marian was momentarily speechless. What's going on? He wondered, a flicker of amusement in his thoughts. Are you stuck? You don't seem to realize you're being approached. So careless. There's no need to call the swordsman. He took a step closer, calling out, "Hey, who are you?" Hearing the voice, the intruder began to panic. Marian drew nearer, his voice a warning. "Even if you're unaware of your purpose here, you've been discovered, so don't even think about doing anything foolish." The intruder, overcome with anxiety, stammered nervously. Marian kept his gaze fixed on the figure before him. To his astonishment, it was Ashira. Her face was now covered in a sheen of cold sweat. "My lady," Marian exclaimed in surprise. "What are you doing here?" Ashira, caught red-handed, hadn't yet regained her composure and was struggling with a nail on the gate. "Sorry," she stammered. "I'll be down in a moment." She finished her sentence, but unfortunately, her grip slipped. She cried out in alarm as she tumbled directly into the central framework. Seeing this incredibly dangerous situation, Marian swiftly extended his hand, catching Ashira effortlessly. Ashira landed in his arms. Their faces were close, their eyes locked in mutual surprise. Suddenly realizing the compromising position, Ashira's face flushed crimson. She began to fidget, her embarrassment causing Marian to shift uncomfortably. "Be careful. If you fall, you'll be hurt in no time." He'd barely finished the warning when Ashira's foot slipped, making his words seem almost prophetic. Ashira cried out, a soft, bewildered sound escaping her lips as she braced for the inevitable pain. The snow, as if mirroring her distress, began to fall more heavily. Marian, with surprising ease, swept Ashira into his arms and carried her inside. As she continued to apologize profusely between sobs, Marian sighed. "It's all right," he reassured her. "That's the 10th apology you've offered." "May I examine your leg?" he asked gently. Ashira readily agreed, aware of the throbbing pain and the growing swelling. Marian abruptly stood. "I need to get some first aid supplies," he explained. "I'll be back shortly with some medicine and bandages from my room. Please wait here." Ashira watched him disappear down the hallway. Left alone, her thoughts began to race. There's actually a connecting door between my room and the Duke's, she mused. I haven't used it once since the wedding, completely forgotten about it. Well, it would be strange to suddenly have a reason to use it now, after all this time in this forced marriage. For nearly 3 years, they had lived as strangers under the same roof. No, this isn't the time. How am I supposed to explain this to the Duke when he returns? He'll be suspicious, but I can't tell him the whole truth. What excuse can I possibly give? Bessie's been watching my every move, reporting directly to Earl Drington, she realized with a jolt. If the letters suddenly stopped, the Earl would find it odd. I wrote the letter in Bessie's handwriting and quickly sent it off, she recalled, her anxiety growing. But I was caught on my way back. The more I try to hide it, the more suspicious I become. Yes, I need a plausible excuse. Just then, Marian returned. Thank you for fetching the medicine, Your Grace, Ashira began. If you'll just give it to me, I can apply it myself. But before she could finish, Marian had already settled down and begun tending to her injury. Flustered, Ashira stammered, Your Grace, I can do it myself. Marian's voice was firm. Don't move. It won't take long, so please bear with me. Seeing his resolute demeanor, Ashira fell silent, her heart pounding in her chest. If you're going to apologize, Marian began. There's no need, he finished. No, Ashira insisted, her mind racing. I think I should tell you where I went today. Actually, I went to the village because of a letter. I was going to send it to a friend back in my hometown. I forgot the posting date, so I had to rush out, and that's why I didn't have time to inform you. Marian's expression was unreadable, a flicker of something complex in his eyes. A friend from your hometown, you say? He asked coolly. Ashira's worry gnawed at her. Does he believe me? She wondered. I'm relieved, but my conscience is heavy. Next time, let me know, Marian offered. I can send the letter for you. And you don't have to hide it anymore, he continued casually. I knew from the beginning. His words sent a shiver down Ashira's spine, her heart skipping a beat. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead. What does he mean? She panicked internally. What does he actually know? Does he know about the Earl's surveillance? Or about everything from 3 years ago? The memory of her king's chilling command flooded back. Go to Sedan. I cannot send my precious daughter to the frigid north. So, impersonate my daughter and marry that duke. If you do this, I will ensure your ailing mother receives treatment. Ashira trembled, fear gripping her heart. No, if the Earl discovers the truth, he'll stop my mother's treatment. I need to buy time until it's complete. Seeing her silence, Marian continued, a hint of melancholy in his voice. I already know that there's someone else in your heart. Ashira was stunned, the successive surprises leaving her reeling. He pressed on, lost in his own narrative. No woman would willingly enter into a forced marriage, would they? I understand. After all, you came here while loving someone else. A wave of relief washed over Ashira as she realized the colossal misunderstanding. Marian's voice was earnest, his gaze steady on Ashira. Therefore, I intend to dissolve this marriage as soon as possible. It's something I've been considering for a long time. I can't do it now, not with the king and queen watching my every move. But I promise you, I'll set you free within a few years. You and the Earl. I won't do anything to harm you, so don't worry. He straightened up, his tone softening. Well then, I'll be going now. Good night. Marian's words echoed in Ashira's mind. I intend to dissolve this marriage. The thought had never crossed her mind. If this marriage could end smoothly, it would be a blessing. The Earl wouldn't be able to object. She could buy more time until her mother recovered. This was exactly what she wanted, yet a strange pang of sadness resonated within her. That night, in the dungeons of Sedan Manor, Bessie huddled in a corner of her dark cell. Her teeth clenched, shivering in the cold, she plotted her escape. Why haven't I received any news from her? She thought furiously. As long as her mother's life is in danger, she has to find a way to get me out of here. Either way, I need to keep sending letters. Come to think of it, she knows how to write, so she could be forging my handwriting and sending the letters herself. Bessie cradled her head in her hands, despair settling in as she realized that if her suspicions were correct, her imprisonment would continue. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. It was Benson, likely on patrol. Bessie seized the opportunity, scrambling to her feet. "Mr. Benson, I have something to tell you," she called out. "Please listen to me." Hearing his name, Benson turned. Upon seeing Bessie, he turned away again, dismissing her with a curt, "I'm sorry, but this puts me in a difficult position. If you have something to say, speak to the warden." Realizing the urgency of her situation, Bessie gritted her teeth in frustration. Mustering all her courage, she blurted out a crucial piece of information. "The Duke is being deceived by the Duchess." Benson stopped, intrigued. "What are you talking about?" he asked, surprise evident in his voice. The following morning, outside Claire's room, a gentle voice called, "May I come in?" "Yes, come in," the little girl replied politely. Rosalie, the perfect image of a kindly grandmother, entered the room carrying a tray of food, a warm smile gracing her face. "It's lunchtime now." Clare, who had been busy fiddling with something on a chair, quickly stood up. Rosalie, her curiosity piqued, asked, "What were you doing?" The little girl had been carefully attaching a drawing to the chair, a picture of a couple holding hands, radiating happiness. Rosalie, upon seeing the drawing, praised Clare. "Did you draw this, Clare? It's beautiful." "Hee, thank you." Clare beamed. "These are the people who are eating with me." Rosalie, puzzled, repeated, "Eating with you?" Clare promptly sat down on the opposite chair. A wide smile spread across the little girl's face as she declared, "Thank you for joining me for dinner today. Please enjoy your meal." Her action spoke volumes to Rosalie, who began to understand. "Thank you, Rosalie, for preparing this meal," Clare added, her words laced with an unusual formality. Rosalie looked at Clare with a sympathetic gaze, perhaps beginning to grasp the girl's less than joyful past. A while later, Marian looked up, a question in his eyes. "You want me to have meals with the little girl?" Rosalie, it turned out, had come to inform Marian of this very thing. "I apologize for telling you this, Your Grace," she explained, "but children learn proper etiquette by dining with adults. Clare needs to dine with an adult, but the adult must set a good example. If it's about teaching etiquette, why not hire someone? I don't see why I have to eat with her." Knowing that persuading Marian wouldn't be easy, Rosalie quickly placed something on the Duke's desk. "Your Grace, please take a look at this," she said mysteriously. Seeing Marian's confused expression, she explained, "This is a drawing Clare made. I saw it today and asked her about it, and she said these are the people eating with her." Upon hearing Rosalie's explanation, Marian's expression shifted slightly. She continued, "Neglecting a child like this isn't good for their character, if they're to grow up healthy by the age of 18. Suddenly, Quentin interrupted, saying, "If Your Grace can't, then I'll go. If it's all right, I think I can have meals with little Clare. We've already met." Rosalie's face lit up. "If Quentin says so, then I'm relieved," she replied eagerly. But her next words immediately silenced him. "So, is there a lady who will be joining you?" Quentin froze, pointing at the drawing. Rosalie explained, "As you can see, it's a drawing of a man and a woman. If possible, I'd like you to go with a lady. Don't you know any ladies?" After about 30 minutes of silence, with no response from Quentin, Rosalie asked dubiously, "Is that true?" Quentin, nearly in tears, explained awkwardly, "I do know some, but ever since I was a child, I've only focused on my studies, and after coming here, I work day and night. Building relationships takes time." At Quentin's response, Rosalie gave Marian a meaningful glance. Marian sighed deeply, knowing full well this would ultimately fall on him. The next evening, Marian began, "Come to think of it, this is the first time the two of you have properly greeted each other." Gesturing towards his wife, he said, "This is Ashura Sedan, the Duchess of Sedan." Then, pointing to Clare, he introduced, "This is Clare." The two began an awkward exchange of greetings, as they had met before, but due to Clare's promise to keep Ashura's secret, she feigned unfamiliarity. "It's a pleasure to meet you, madam," the little girl said. Ashura played along perfectly, responding with a bright smile, "The pleasure is all mine." "Clare," Marian steered the conversation. "Now, then, shall we sit down?" Clare, seemingly thrilled, responded with a resounding yes. The happiness on her face was undeniable. "I can't believe I'm having dinner with the Duke and Duchess," she thought. "What should I do? I'm so nervous. This is definitely going to be a happy time." A minute later, Clare looked around the room. Marian commented placidly, "This is delicious." Ashura simply echoed, "Indeed." The current atmosphere quickly dampened Clare's enthusiasm, leaving her disappointed. "Why is it so awkward? Is dinner usually like this? I'm so worried. I can't even taste the food." In the distance, Benson still stood. His emotions at this moment were incredibly complex. Rewinding to the previous night, Bessie had told him, "The current Duchess is an imposter." Benson had shouted in outrage, "How dare you utter such disrespectful words?" Bessie had tried to explain. Though it's hard to believe, it's the truth. That woman is a fake, swapped in secret by the Darlington family. I'm in here because of her. I felt guilty for deceiving the Duke, so I was going to tell him, but she found out and locked me up here. Please believe me, I'm innocent. Benson, seeing Bessie's sincerity, had begun to waver. Sensing she was close to breaking through, she continued, I think the Duke might have noticed something because at some point he started avoiding her. Just watch the two of them closely, and you're bound to sense something strange. Benson, observing Ashira's every move, couldn't help but conclude, I only realize now their relationship has been this cold all along. How can they have a meal without even looking at each other? He then glanced sympathetically at Clare, who could only peek glances, feeling uncomfortable. Suddenly, Ashira broke the awkward silence. Clare, are you all right? The dish, mixed with strong-tasting vegetables, was difficult to eat. No, it's fine. I can eat it, Clare replied politely. Seeing this, Ashira said, if it's hard to swallow, don't force yourself. As if to prove her point, Clare declared loudly, it really is okay. I can eat anything. See, with that, she took a large bite. It's delicious, the little girl exclaimed cheerfully. The gesture made Ashira laugh. That's wonderful, she responded. So cute. Encouraged, Clare continued, I like meat, but I also like corn and potatoes. Ashira replied naturally, oh my, me too. We're so alike. The little girl then asked Ashira seriously, besides food, what else do you like? Would I like embroidery or writing? I can't quite remember. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. Clare anxiously asked her, what about the Duke? Do you like him too? Ashira couldn't believe Clare would ask her that, especially in front of Marian. She was so shocked, she didn't know how to respond. The atmosphere immediately became stiff and awkward. Clare, terrified, started to sweat. The little girl asked Ashira, her eyes welling up, did I say something wrong? Aren't married couples supposed to always like each other? Seeing Clare on the verge of tears, Ashira relented, saying, yes, Clare, of course, I like the Duke. I like him very much. Just as she finished speaking, Marian accidentally dropped his knife. For the first time, Marian found himself in such an awkward situation, feeling as if the whole world was staring at him. Clare asked him in confusion, Your Grace, are you all right? Marion replied tartly, embarrassed, I'm fine. Don't worry, Clare. Not wanting to let the opportunity slip, Clare innocently asked Marian, that lady said she likes you, Your Grace. Do you like her too? Instead of answering immediately, Marian reminded her, at the dinner table, you should focus on your meal. At that moment, Clare suddenly remembered what Rosalie had told her. Talking during meals would greatly influence the formation of a child's values. Suddenly, Marian placed his knife on his plate. He nervously stammered a reply to Clare's question. I like that lady too. Ashira couldn't believe her ears, staring at him in disbelief. No one, especially a cynical person like Bessie, would have believed Marian's answer. It was truly shocking. After Marian spoke, all four of them were stunned into silence. Seeing Bessie's exaggerated reaction, Marian impatiently asked him, Is there something wrong with my answer? Bessie awkwardly replied, No, nothing's wrong. You two are truly the ideal couple for all married couples. He wondered to himself, their relationship isn't good. Where did I misunderstand? The sun had risen high, and Clare had returned to her room, leaving only Marian and Ashira in the dining hall. She breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like a storm had passed. Marian said to her, Thank you for dining with us today. You must have been surprised. No, Rosalie had already explained and asked for my help, so I wanted to be as helpful as possible. She pondered, feeling strangely uncomfortable. It was the first time she had seen the Duke since that day, and she had said those words today. Of course it would be awkward, although the Duke didn't seem to mind. Suddenly, she stood up and said, Excuse me, may I leave first? I have something to do. When I return, Marian took a sip of his wine and asked her seriously, Are you going to write a letter again? That night, the person you sent the letter to, he suddenly stopped speaking. He stood up and said, I apologize. Please forget what I just said. I'll excuse myself. Ashira looked at his retreating figure, perplexed. Surely her heart was in turmoil as well. After a while, she returned to her room. As she walked, she thought, time flies. My mind was so full of thoughts just now, I went for a walk. I came back too late. Why did the Duke say that? Is he still brooding over what happened that day? Ashira's attention was drawn to something on the table. It was a handwritten letter. She picked it up suspiciously and looked it over. The letter hadn't been there before she went out. I apologize for what happened earlier. I didn't mean to blame you. You have the right to share your feelings with anyone. Ashira read the letter carefully. She suspected it was from the Duke. Now, she realized Marian was still troubled by the event of that day. I have to reply to him, she murmured to herself. Carefully, she wrote, that letter the other night wasn't a love letter, and I don't have anyone to share my feelings with. Hopefully, this misunderstanding can be cleared up within 10 minutes. Ashira was already standing in front of Marian's room. She hid the letter behind her back, anxiety churning in her stomach. I've written it, but what if he finds it strange that I even bothered to reply when I give it to him? No, that won't do, but I still can't let him continue misunderstanding me. That's right, this is just to clear up the misunderstanding. Stealing her resolve, Ashira gathered her courage and knocked on Marian's door, calling softly, "Your Grace, are you in there?" A quick response came from inside. "Yes, please wait a moment." Ashira started to feel nervous. Glancing at herself, she thought, I've just let my hair down. Is this all right? Maybe I should comb it? And my clothes? She looked down at what she was wearing, and her face flushed uncontrollably. I've only just realized I'm still in my nightgown, flustered and mortified. Just as she was in a state of panic, Marian opened the door. Ashira had no choice but to cry out, "No, don't open it any further." Startled, Marian paused, unsure what problem Ashira had encountered outside. Suddenly, an arm reached through the slightly open door, clutching a letter. Ashira whispered, "I came to give you this." He quickly took the letter from her hand, surprised. "I didn't expect you to reply to my letter," Ashira explained. "Even though it's a marriage of convenience, I can't let you misunderstand me." "Misunderstand? I see. I apologize. I made assumptions on my own. I thought you had someone you liked." Hearing Marian say this, Ashira froze. Marian continued, "Ever since you came here 3 years ago, you've always seemed to have someone on your mind. I'm sorry for presuming." Ashira suddenly spoke. "The person I miss is my mother. To me, she's the most important person in the world, the one who truly cares for me, the one who loves me more than anything, so much so that I can never repay her, not even in a lifetime." Ashira couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. Tears welled up in her eyes. She discreetly wiped them away, thinking, "What am I saying? The Duke probably isn't interested in this sort of thing." Suddenly, Marian said, "Your mother, she must know how much you love her." Ashira felt a warmth spread through her chest. She thought, as expected, the Duke is a good person. Although he's quiet, I can feel it, that care and warmth. He's that kind of person. Claire's question, "Do you like the Duke?" That child's words, "Yes." The next morning, Marian stood by the window, overlooking the entirety of Sedan Manor. He quietly contemplated the events of a few minutes ago. Tired, he took off his jacket, preparing to rest. Suddenly, something caught his attention. It was a letter placed on the table. He quickly picked up the letter to examine it. At a glance, it seemed to be a reply from Ashira. She had written the following, "Good day, Your Grace. Thank you very much for listening to me yesterday. If you don't mind, may I occasionally write to you like this? Of course, if you're uncomfortable with it, you can refuse." Marian rested his chin in his hand, lost in thought. "It's a good thing I wrote that letter yesterday. It might have been a misunderstanding, but I feel a little closer." Suddenly, Benson called out to him from behind, startling him. Benson quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Your Grace. No matter how I called out to you, you didn't respond." Then, he handed a stack of documents to Marian, reporting, "These are leave applications from the writers." Marian looked through the documents in surprise, asking, "Leave applications? Why so suddenly?" All the applications listed December 31st as the desired leave date. Marian then remembered that the end of the year was approaching. Benson replied, somewhat awkwardly, "Actually, I'd forgotten as well. Most of the writers with families have submitted applications. I suppose everyone wants to spend the last day of the year with their loved ones." Benson's words caught Marian's attention. He handed the stack of documents back to Benson, instructing, "All right, I'll look through these tomorrow," and pass them on to Quentin. "Thank you for letting me know." With that, Marian turned and left. Watching the Duke's retreating figure, Benson thought to himself, puzzled, "I've been attending to His Grace for years, and this is the first time I've seen him smile." A few minutes later, Clare stood stiffly in front of Marian's room, consumed by anxiety. She couldn't understand why the Duke had summoned her. "Did I do something wrong today?" she worried. "I brushed my teeth, washed my hands, and even ate lots of vegetables." Her anxiety only intensified when she heard Marian's command to enter. Seeing Clare, Marian asked with unusual concern, "This is the first time we've met since that dinner. How have you been?" Clare blurted out nervously, "Yes, I brushed my teeth, washed my hands properly, and ate lots of vegetables." Marian got straight to the point. There's no other reason why I called you here. At the end of this year, I will be heading to the North Wall. Clare asked curiously, "What's the North Wall?" The Duke explained, "Every year, Sedan holds a fireworks festival at the North Wall. It symbolizes survival in the harshest of places and a blessing for the future. So, I called you here to ask if you'd like to go." Marian's words took Clare completely by surprise. Her mouth agape, she asked, "Can I go too?" Marian clarified, "It's not just me. Everyone else will be leaving the manor as well, so it's best to go together. If you don't want to go, I won't force you." Clare responded resolutely, "No. If it wouldn't be a bother, I'd really like to go. I want to see the fireworks." Suddenly, Marian uttered a "thank you," which flustered Clare. The little girl wondered, why is he thanking me? Unbeknownst to her, Marian harbored a quiet desire to spend some time alone with his wife. Quentin exclaimed excitedly, "Finally, I get to see the New Year's fireworks festival. I never thought His Grace would allow me to go along. I wouldn't even dare to dream of it. I thought I'd be buried in work again." Marian dryly pulled Quentin back to reality, interrupting him, "Don't get too excited. This isn't just for leisure." Quentin inquired, "Marian, a while ago, due to the request from the Mages Guild, you were planning to head north, weren't you?" I was a bit surprised. "The Mages Guild requested approval to investigate the fallen golem." Marian nodded in confirmation. "That's right. The investigation has been underway for a while. It's been 10 years since monsters began pouring in from the North Wall. The Archmage and the previous king perished at the same time. It was a tragedy. The Archmage, a golem master, lost his life due to the collapse of a giant golem. The bodies of both were buried beneath that golem, hence the name Fallen Golem. This incident caused relations between the royal family and the Mages Guild to deteriorate." Quentin asked worriedly, "Is it all right to permit the investigation under these circumstances? We have to consider the royal family stance. And, most importantly, isn't that a mystery that can't be properly investigated? If you're not a golem master, you can't touch the golem's remains. But there's still hope. The one leading this investigation is the son of the previous Archmage. His name is Noah. Though not a golem master like his predecessor, at the young age of 11, he's already considered one of the 5 greatest mages. I intend to meet him at the North Wall. In the forest, before a small carriage, stood 2 mysterious figures, seemingly waiting for something. One held a fork with a piece of cake on it, muttering. "He's not eating again," the person beside him said worriedly. "Is it really all right like this?" The other replied. "He says he's not hungry and doesn't want to eat. What can we do?" Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. "What's going on?" It was Nathan. One moment his face held a smile. The next he was gritting his teeth, cursing, "We'd be grateful if he went looking for death. How dare he investigate the fallen golem, planning to hoard everything for himself. He killed his own mother and still has the audacity to live." He spun around sharply, lowering his voice. "Forget it. Let's move on. We need to get to the North Wall quickly." Inside the carriage, Noah hung his head silently. Even though he heard every word Nathan uttered, he didn't complain. He recalled his teacher's words. "Noah, go north and investigate the fallen golem. If it's you, the hidden truth will be revealed." Nathan's words now echoed in Noah's mind. He killed his own mother and still has the audacity to live. Noah looked sorrowfully at the glittering stone in his hand, thinking, "I'm sorry, teacher. I might not be able to keep my promise. A monster like me doesn't deserve to investigate." Meanwhile, back at Sedan Manor, Clare was overjoyed. Manji asked the little girl curiously, "Do you like going to the North Wall that much?" Clare couldn't contain her joy, exclaiming, "Of course. This is my first time seeing fireworks, and my first time going out. I'm so excited. I read in a book that if you go to a new place, you'll make new friends. So I hope I can make new friends there too." Soon, the Duke's entourage departed. Vincent opened the carriage door, announcing, "Miss Clare, we've arrived." Clare's eyes widened, gazing out at the scene. "So this is Sedan's North Wall." Benson carefully addressed the little girl. "Clare, the road is slippery, so I'll carry you down." At the same time, Ashura also opened the carriage door, preparing to disembark. Suddenly, a hand extended towards her. Unexpectedly, Marian was now being so proactive, gallantly offering his hand. Ashura was taken aback. Marian nervously awaited Ashura's reaction. Perhaps at this moment, a storm of emotions was brewing within Ashura. She gently placed her hand in the Duke's, not forgetting to thank him. Meanwhile, Benson was adjusting Claire's hair ribbon. The little girl's gaze fell upon the rosy atmosphere between the two. Claire couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow." As expected, they really do have a good relationship. Lost in the escalating emotions of the moment, Claire's loud comment brought the young couple back to reality. Marian coughed awkwardly, feigning nonchalance, and quickly changed the subject, telling Claire, "Go back to your room." A while later, at the North Wall Manor, Marian gestured towards a room, explaining, "This is your room while you're here. It's simpler than the one at Sedan Manor, but comfortable enough." Marian crouched down seriously in front of Claire, asking, "What do you need to be careful of while staying here?" The sudden question didn't faze Claire. She confidently raised her hand and replied, "To avoid catching a cold, I need to wear thick clothes even indoors. I can go outside, but I can't climb the walls, and I have to go with Uncle Benson." Satisfied with her answer, Marian quickly stood up, praising her. "Well done. I have a meeting, so I'll be going now." Claire asked curiously, "A meeting? Are you leaving right away?" Seeing her surprised expression, Marian was puzzled, asking, "Is something wrong?" Startled by the counter-question, the little girl stammered, "Nothing's wrong. It's just that I just arrived, and before coming here, I'm sure you've been working constantly. You must be very tired." A simple sentence from Claire seemed to warm Marian's heart. As the Duke remained silent, the little girl continued shyly, "I'm sorry. I'm talking too much nonsense." Though touched, Marian still feigned indifference, turning away as he said, "It's all right. Get some rest." His gesture inadvertently plunged Claire into despair. Burying her face in her pillow, she berated herself. "I'm such an idiot. Why did I talk to the Duke like that? He must think I'm arrogant." Now, she suddenly lifted her head, glancing to the side. The bag on the bed kept moving, as if calling out to Claire. The little girl jumped up excitedly, exclaiming, "Ah, that's right. I left meringue candy here." Suddenly, meringue candy leaped on her head, making her cry out in surprise. Claire, with tears welling in her eyes, whispered, "What's wrong, meringue candy? That hurts." Meringue candy replied with equal seriousness, "You're too loud. Why did you pick that up?" In Claire's hand was the stone Noah had inadvertently dropped. At that moment, the girl froze. She began to recall, "Right, I put that stone in there too." On the way here, when the carriage stopped for a short break to check the wheels, I was allowed to play nearby, and I started looking at the stones on the road. By chance, this glittering pink stone caught my eye. It was such a pretty stone. Back in the present, Claire admired the stone, murmuring again, "I thought it was pretty then, so I picked it up. But why is it so noisy now?" As soon as she finished speaking, the stone suddenly spoke to Claire. "Hey, little girl, can you hear me?" Claire was utterly astonished. She quickly responded, "So stones can talk?" Hearing Claire's reply, the stone immediately sighed in relief. "Thank goodness, you can hear me. Little girl, this is sudden, but I need your help. Noah, my friend, is in grave danger. Evil wizards have locked Noah inside a carriage. Noah hasn't had anything to eat or drink for days. If this continues, he'll die. Please help me, little girl. Save Noah." Meanwhile, Marian was taking a stroll outside in the courtyard. Claire's warm words echoed in his mind. "The Duke must be tired," he thought to himself. "Who is worried about whom? Does this girl even know her own situation?" Thinking back, it had always been this way. She knew she would die at 18, yet she always smiled as if she had no worries, and she always called him her benefactor. Marian reached out to turn the doorknob, but paused for about 5 seconds, lost in thought. He then wearily shook his head, thinking, "What am I even thinking about? I seem to be a bit tired lately." He went inside, and Nathan immediately noticed Marian, walking in slowly with a serious expression. Seeing Marian as his lord, Nathan obediently rushed out to greet him. He said, "Greetings, your grace. I've been waiting for you. I am Obi Nathan. Thank you for giving this investigation your serious consideration." Marian responded indifferently. "I'm only cooperating because I need to find something, but I don't see Noah say anywhere." This casual question made Nathan's heart skip a beat. He worried, "Of course, I can't just ignore this." He began to fabricate a story. "About that, Noah isn't coming." Marian asked suspiciously, "Not coming? I clearly received notification that Noah Say would be in charge of this investigation." Nathan, without changing his expression, lied smoothly. "According to Mr. Donakudo, Noah's teacher, that was the original plan. But as you know, Mr. Donakudo passed away not long ago. Instead, I will be in charge of this investigation. Although Noah is one of the 5 great mages, he is still a child after all. Such an important matter should be handled by an adult, so that your grace can have peace of mind." Marian said coldly, Is that so? Yes, so there's no need to worry. Let's begin the meeting. Suddenly, Marian's attitude took a complete 180, and he said seriously, "In that case, I don't think I can allow this investigation to proceed." Meanwhile, Claire was peeking inside from the doorway. She remembered the stone's words. "Noah is in the carriage. Please save him," she thought. "I don't know who Noah is." But seeing how desperate the stone was, he must be an important friend. Claire made up her mind. "Noah, wait for me. I'll definitely find you." But less than a second later, Claire ran into a huge problem. "How do I get there? I don't even know where the carriage is." Suddenly, Benson's voice came from behind Claire. "What are you doing at the doorway?" Claire saw Benson as her savior. She called out to him anxiously. "Benson." Benson asked curiously, "Why are you in such a hurry? Is there something you need help with?" The little girl suddenly hesitated, worrying internally. "What should I do? Should I tell him the truth and ask for help? But then I'd have to say I could talk to stones. That's impossible." Claire decided to lie. Nervously, she blurted out, "Outdoor activities." She flailed her hands in a fluster. "Why, yes. I wanted to see the carriage the mages came in. I saw it in a book. It can fly." Benson sighed. "Oh, so the child wants to see the magic carriage. I wonder if she'll be able to." The mages are in a meeting right now. They'll probably leave after it's over. Knowing this was her advantage, Claire immediately widened her eyes and said to Benson in a sweet voice, "Uncle, can I go see it now?" Of course, Benson couldn't resist the little girl's adorable plea. He finally relented, standing up and saying, "If it's just for a little while, it's all right. So, come with me quickly." Once outside, Benson pointed into the distance. "Over there, that's the mage's carriage. From the outside, it doesn't look very special, does it?" Suddenly, something caught Claire's attention. She looked at the two men in front of her, speculating internally. Are those people the wall guards? Their aura is different from the swordsman at the manor. So tall, so scary. Claire's curious gaze caught the one-eyed man's attention. He quickly walked toward the two of them. Claire also noticed the man's movement. She nervously hid behind Benson, wondering why the man was suddenly approaching. Thinking she had done something wrong, she quickly lowered her head and muttered softly, "I'm sorry." But the man's next words made Claire's eyes widen. The group gathered in front of Claire, commenting amongst themselves, "So cute. Such a small and adorable girl. Why is she in such a cold and desolate place? How rude. You can tell she's a noble lady at a glance. So small. Does Mr. Benson already have such a big child?" Benson sighed, replying, "Of course not. This child is a prisoner, so don't get too close." Hearing this, the group froze awkwardly, and after a moment, continued their chatter. A prisoner? If she's a prisoner, staying at the Duke's manor, could she be a Gascoigne? These words reached Claire's ears, and she lowered her head, a look of sadness on her face. The one-eyed man couldn't bear to see the girl like this, so he let out a hearty laugh and said, "I don't quite understand the adult's problems, but if she's this cute, that's a serious crime." The men behind him, catching his drift, chimed in, yes. If being cute is a crime, then the girl would be sentenced to life imprisonment. Benson wearily pushed Claire away, saying, "Don't mind them. Let's go quickly." Claire looked back, thinking, come to think of it, they weren't as scary as I thought. Suddenly, a shout came from the redstone. "Little girl, hurry. Noah is in the wooden carriage over there. I can feel his life force fading. Hurry." Hearing the redstone's warning, Claire dashed off, leaving Benson in a panic. He immediately chased after her, saying, "Where are you going by yourself?" Following the redstone's directions, she had already reached the carriage. Claire quickly peered inside through the crack in the door. She stood there, eyes wide with shock. Just then, Benson came running up, out of breath. "If you keep running like that and get hurt, it'll be troublesome." Claire pointed inside anxiously. "Uncle Benson." In here, on the floor, there's a boy passed out. Inside the meeting room, Marian sternly told Nathan, "This investigation is not permitted. The reason I decided to allow it was because I heard Noah say was leading the investigation. Without him, it must be reconsidered from the beginning." Marian's words landed on Nathan like a bomb. He stammered his explanation. "Noah isn't ready. The sudden loss of his mentor has caused him a mental breakdown." Suddenly, a shout came from outside the meeting room. "Your Grace, it's Benson. I have urgent news to report." After receiving Marian's permission, Benson entered. He immediately whispered what he had seen into Marian's ear. Marian, his face grim, asked Benson, "Are you certain?" Benson confidently affirmed, "Yes, I checked myself. That was enough." Marian coldly addressed Nathan. "In that case, let's hear an explanation from the person involved. Why is Noah Say, who was said to not be coming, now trapped inside a carriage?" Inside Claire's room, Noah, thankfully rescued in time, was resting in bed. Noah's face was slick with cold sweat, and he didn't look well. Claire whispered worriedly, "Where is he hurt?" "There don't seem to be any visible wounds," Ashura replied melancholically. "You said the child was locked in the carriage, right? And for many days. If that's the case, his spirit must be exhausted. The problem is, there's nothing we can do about it right now." Suddenly, an idea sparked in Claire's mind, and she quickly stood up. "I've got it. If we take off his mask, he'll feel better." Ashura became nervous and quickly stopped her. "Wait, Claire. You can't touch it without permission." Claire's hand was already reaching for Noah's mask. Suddenly, Noah woke up. He sat up abruptly, pushing Claire's hand away, and shouted, "Don't touch it." Startled by Noah's sudden reaction, Claire quickly said, "I'm sorry. I was just worried you weren't feeling well." Noah adjusted his mask with his hand. He looked around blankly, unsure of where he was, thinking, "Wasn't I in the carriage?" Suddenly, Noah started to sweat, feeling like something bad was about to happen. Noah's whole body suddenly began to glow. Seeing this, Ashura screamed in fear. "Claire, danger!" She rushed over and hugged the little girl. Just then, Benson arrived as well. The light was too bright, illuminating the room directly, causing him to hesitate for a moment. He quickly ran inside, shouting, "Miss Clare!" Suddenly, he fell silent. Before him now were only Ashura and Clare. Noah had vanished at some point. Where Noah had been lying just moments before, now only a faint wisp of smoke remained. The boy had disappeared without a trace, and no one could understand what had just happened. After a while, Benson reported to Marian, "Noah Say has disappeared, madam. When we went in, only Miss Clare and Miss Ashura were in the room." Just then, Claire spoke up. "It's my fault. I touched Noah's mask. I didn't know he hated it so much." Ashura couldn't bear to see Claire so upset, so she quickly bent down and comforted the girl, stroking her head. "There's nothing to be sad about, Claire. It's Noah's fault, isn't it?" It seems Claire has also been quite frightened. It's best she returns to her room to rest. Marian ordered, "Search the area around the manor thoroughly." Claire obediently followed Ashura back to her room. The little girl was very worried about Noah. She didn't know where he was now. Suddenly, the pink stone shouted to Claire, "Hey, little girl, I can feel Noah's power nearby." "He must be close by," Claire gasped in surprise. She looked around, thinking nearby. There's no one in the room. Could it be? Thinking of something, Claire opened the window and looked out. Suddenly, Claire's eyes widened in astonishment. Before her stood Noah, the very person everyone was frantically searching for. Claire called out, "You're here." "I was so worried." Seeing Noah about to leave, Claire asked curiously, "Where are you going now?" Claire hurriedly climbed onto the windowsill, chasing after him and shouting, "Wait, don't go." Worried about Noah, and in her haste, Claire's leg caught on the windowsill, and she pitched forward. She screamed, catching Noah's attention. Claire squeezed her eyes shut in fear, silently praying. But fortunately, Noah wasn't so indifferent. He easily reached out and caught her. He couldn't help but scold her softly. "Be careful. What if you got hurt?" Claire breathed a sigh of relief, not forgetting to thank Noah. Their hands were still intertwined. Sensing something, Claire stared intently at Noah. The image of Jonah arc appeared in Claire's mind. He smiled kindly at Noah, saying, "You are a very special child. Someday, someone will recognize your true identity." Claire stared at Noah in bewilderment, wondering, could this be Noah's memory? A while later, Claire was building a fire to warm up. Seeing Noah still silent, she called out to him. She offered the pink stone to Noah, asking, "Is this stone your friend? I picked it up on the way here. I'll get it back to you." But Noah firmly refused, turning away coldly. "That stone is not my friend." Claire listened closely as the pink stone in her hand spoke. "It's no use. Noah can't hear my voice." Suddenly, Noah called out Claire's name. He asked her, "Are you really not a mage? Just now, when I touched your hand, you read my memories." "If you were an ordinary person, that would be impossible," Claire answered sincerely. "I don't know how to use magic. This is the first time something like this has happened, so I'm not sure." Can I ask you something about that memory? Was that man your grandfather? He seemed to care about you a lot. Noah replied with a hint of sadness. That man was my teacher, although he's no longer in this world. You're right. He really cared about me. He was my only support. As he spoke, Noah suddenly fell silent. He turned away, his voice cold. I've been talking nonsense. Forget what I just said. Claire stared blankly at Noah, thinking, why can't I understand Noah better? But I feel like Noah has always been very lonely, very sad. I feel like I shouldn't leave him alone. With this thought, Claire softly called out, Noah. She hurried towards him, making him slightly nervous. Claire boldly took Noah's hand. Looking sincerely into Noah's eyes, she asked, do you want to be friends with me? Stunned by Claire's sudden action, Noah's face flushed crimson. He stammered, what did you just say? Then, pulling his hand away, he muttered, don't talk nonsense. Let go of my hand, Claire said sadly. You don't want to be friends with me? I want to be friends with Noah. Noah nodded, acknowledging Claire's words. With a somber expression, he said, you're only saying that because you know nothing about me. I'm a monster. Claire looked anxiously at Noah, holding her breath. The boy recounted dejectedly, actually, in that carriage where you found me, I was planning to die. However, even if you continue to starve or endure extreme cold, you won't die, and you remain normal. If you were an ordinary person, you have died long ago. After that, I felt even more strongly that I really am a monster, just like everyone says. They said, my father told you that I am a monster. He said that if you played with me, you would be kicked out of your house. So if you pity me so much, please stop. If you don't want to be involved with a monster. Having said that, Noah quickly turned his face away. He guessed her mind must have changed by now. But unexpectedly, Claire gently took Noah's hand and said, thank you. It was hard for Noah to say thank you for being honest with me. Claire, beaming, said, I have something to tell you too. You'll listen, right? The two quickly sat down on the ground. Noah asked Claire what she wanted to say. After a moment of hesitation, the girl mustered her courage. Actually, I'm a prisoner from Ghost Street. Originally, I didn't know if I was someone who deserved to die, but because I asked the Duke for help, I'm here now. It might seem strange for a prisoner to say these things, but actually, I'm happier now than I was in Ghost Street. Noah asked curiously, but why are you telling me this? Claire's next word surprised Noah. The girl smiled brightly. Because I want to be friends with you, she continued cheerfully. A prisoner and a monster, just like a pair of friends, right? Or do you not like prisoners? Noah teased Claire playfully, turning his face to the side. What if I said I didn't like them? Claire, innocently believing him, began to plead. That won't do. Please think again. Claire's actions made Noah laugh in spite of himself. He said shyly, do as you please. Thrilled to have Noah's acceptance, Claire beamed. Really? So we're friends now, right? Noah, his usual aloof self, replied monotonously. I'm afraid refusing would only make things more troublesome. That day, Claire and Noah were scolded by the adults for not immediately reporting their earlier escapade. Until Noah fully recovered, it was decided they would both remain at the manor. Claire was also permitted to play with Noah, though the boy didn't seem particularly thrilled. Claire, however, appeared delighted with the arrangement. She even drew a picture of the two of them. The pink stone on the table piped up. Is that Noah on the left? Claire quickly replied, yes. It looks just like him, doesn't it? Noah, who was also there, asked curiously, can you really talk to stones, Claire? Didn't you hear what the pink stone said? The boy paused for a moment, then answered, I can sense magical energy, but I didn't hear anything. He looked at Claire, a thoughtful expression on his face. I can sense the magical fluctuations between you and the pink stone. At first, I thought you were a mage, but something's different. An ordinary mage only uses their own magic. Stones and magic don't interact. If that's the case, your identity. Noah asked Claire seriously, have you talked to stones before? Claire answered honestly, Noah, you're the first person I've ever told about this. Hearing this, the boy seemed relieved. He added, not forgetting to caution her, good. Keep it a secret from now on. Seeing Claire's puzzled face, Noah explained, didn't you say you're happy with your life now? If you want to keep living like this, you have to hide it. Those with abilities aren't allowed to live peaceful lives. So never tell anyone about your ability. Claire rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, I don't really understand what you mean. It's so confusing. What ability? I'm just talking. Noah suddenly leaned closer to Claire, his voice urgent. Never talk about this. Never let anyone find out. He asked again, his gaze intense. Do you understand? The girl replied softly, yes, I understand. It is a bit strange. A sound from outside caught Noah's attention. The boy watched, thinking silently. That carriage. It seems he's arrived. A few minutes later, a man with light brown hair, metallic yellow eyes, and a prominent scar on his neck appeared. He sat before Marian and said, "We made a mistake, Your Grace." With that, he bowed his head sincerely. "I apologize to you on behalf of the Mages Guild." Marian studied the man before him, silently assessing. This is Theo Arct, Jonah Arct's son, one of the few high-ranking mages. Talented and gentle. He's often mentioned as the next chief mage. Marian finally spoke. "Let there be no similar incidents in the future. I hope the trust we've worked hard to regain won't be broken." Theo replied, "Thank you for your leniency, Your Grace. The prince and the two mages involved in this matter will be punished accordingly. If you permit, I will send a mage to assist with the investigation." The person dispatched this time. Hearing this, Marian slowed his speech, interrupting Theo. "Discussing the investigation now should be fine. I will send an investigation team to the site of the collapsed golem." Theo continued to express his thoughts. "There's one more thing I'd like to tell you. Your Grace, I heard Noah is here. Is Noah all right? I was worried, as he went through such a terrifying ordeal." Marian replied, "He's physically fine. He's resting and being observed. He remains normal after the incident." Hearing this, Theo sighed in relief. "I see. He's always been like that since he was young. Sometimes, I feel he's more mature than I am. I think I understand why my father cherished him so much. It would be nice if he complained like a child sometimes." Feeling he'd overshared, Theo awkwardly addressed Marian. "I must have taken up too much of your time. Your Grace must be busy, so let's end our conversation here." Marian responded indifferently. "The necessary discussion has concluded. Let's leave it at that." As they reached the door, Marian asked Theo, "Aren't you going to see Noah?" Theo answered honestly, "I'm afraid I might disturb his rest. It's a shame, but I will arrange it next time. Then, I'll take my leave." With that, Theo turned and quickly departed. Two swordsmen promptly opened the carriage door for him. Only now did Theo's true face reveal itself, a mask of anger replacing the polite facade. He thought furiously, "Noah say, after all those words, are you all right?" Theo's expression now turned quite sinister as he muttered to himself, "How terrifying." The next morning, Clare was in high spirits. The little girl hummed a cheerful tune, a box of cookies clutched in her hands. The lovely cookie box looked absolutely delectable. "Noah, let's eat cookies together." However, only silence answered Clare's cheerful call. Disappointed, she murmured to herself, "Isn't Noah here? Where did he go?" A maid, overhearing Clare, addressed her. "Are you looking for the boy in this room? He went out with the Duke early this morning, I believe." Clare echoed in confusion. "With the Duke?" Meanwhile, outside, a carriage traveled slowly through the snow-covered landscape. "We've arrived, Your Grace." Indeed, Noah and Marian were journeying together. Before them stood the collapsed golem, the one often spoken of in legends. The two stepped inside. Noah began, "Let's examine the current state." Marian asked the boy how he felt. Noah replied, "I can sense immense magical power within each stone. Surprisingly, this level of magic isn't active. This truly isn't something that can be easily undone." Marian's feelings were complex at this moment. He observed Noah, thinking, in reality, "You're just a child, aren't you? You're only 11 years old." Was entrusting this investigation to this boy truly the right decision? It's not that I doubt his abilities. Though young, he's still one of the top 5 specialists recognized by Master Jonah Arct. However, the worrying thing is, Marian's thoughts drifted back to his younger days, when he had met Noah's mother at the manor. It was Say, a woman with sea blue hair and ruby eyes. Marian remembered her in her prime, a golem master powerful enough to be considered for chief mage. She was incredibly renowned. There wasn't a soul on the continent who didn't know her name. No one could have predicted her untimely demise. 10 years ago, monsters rose and attacked the North Wall, igniting the Silverlight War. At that time, Say had appeared on the battlefield. She was pregnant at the time. I didn't participate in that battle, so I don't know how things unfolded. But survivors said that in the dead of night, as the battle neared its end, at the king's encampment, alongside Say, they said her golem collapsed. Even as she lay dying, she used every possible means to save her child. Managed to pull her newborn baby from the wreckage. That child was Noah Say. Just then, Noah looked up at Marian, reassuring him, "You needn't worry. I don't even remember my mother's face, let alone recall those times. So I won't let grief affect the investigation. A detailed investigation report will be sent to you every month. Marion remained silent, offering no response. Noah asked him curiously, "Are you still worried?" He shook his head, answering perfunctorily, "It's nothing." But inwardly, he'd taken note of something. For some reason, they were incredibly alike. A while later, Clare grumbled, "If you're going to leave so early in the morning, you should have told me. I wanted us to eat the freshly baked cookies together, but now they've gone cold somehow." Noah was already sitting across from her. Rather than waiting, "You should have eaten them first," he said. Clare countered, "But these are best enjoyed together. Noah, you have to try them. The pastries the Sedan Manor chefs make are really delicious." At Clare's recommendation, the boy picked one up and took a bite. He commented, "Good, right? I knew you'd like them. Noah, if you come with me to Sedan Manor, I'll show you around. It's big and beautiful, much better than here. Everyone's friendly too. I was thinking about what we could do together. It's so spacious. It would be fun to play hide and seek." But Noah's next words hit Clare like a bolt from the blue. "There seems to be a slight misunderstanding. I won't be going with you to Sedan Manor." The world around Clare suddenly felt dark and gloomy. Panicked, she asked him why. Noah explained, "I have to stay here to conduct the investigation. That's why I came here." Clare asked dejectedly, "But we just became friends. The books say friends stay together forever." Noah, feeling a little awkward, said, "Even friends can't always stay together." Tears welled up in Clare's eyes. "I don't want to be apart from you, Noah. I want to keep playing with you." She cried. Noah stood up. "Why cry over something like this?" "Don't cry. It's not like we'll never see each other again," he told her. But when Clare asked him what he meant, Noah blushed, stammering as he rewound to a few minutes earlier. Marion had suggested to the boy, "I meant sending a report monthly, not through mail. What do you think about coming directly to Sedan Manor?" Noah had asked in confusion, "Why is that necessary?" Marion explained, "I believe it would make communication easier. Besides, you seem to have gotten closer to Clare. Wouldn't it be a shame to separate? Clare, even you." Back in the present, Noah crossed his arms and explained to Clare, "I have to report on my investigation, so I might see you once a month. It's a bit inconvenient, but since the Duke suggested it, there's nothing I can do." Understanding the situation, Clare mumbled, "I see. Once a month." Glancing at Clare, Noah guessed her downcast mood and softly called out, "Clare," he added, "being apart doesn't mean we're not friends anymore. So even in different places, friends are still friends." At that moment, Clare's mood brightened. Her eyes widening, she explained, "Even if we're apart, we're still friends." She added excitedly, "When I get back to Sedan Manor, I'll write to Noah. I'll write every day." Noah stopped her, a little exasperated. "You don't have to write every day." Suddenly, someone called for Clare from outside the room. It was Benson. "Hurry up, everyone's waiting," he told her. Clare immediately stood up. "Okay, I'll be right out." "Noah." A little worried, Noah asked her, "Where are you going tonight? Are you leaving today?" On the other hand, Clare was brimming with excitement. "Do you want to go see the fireworks together?" she asked Noah. But Noah replied indifferently, "I'm not going to the fireworks festival." She was utterly shocked. Waving her hands, Clare began pleading with Noah, "Even if it's the New Year's fireworks, they're so bright and beautiful. If you come, you'll definitely like them." Noah let out a deep, exasperated sigh. "Thank you, but I'm a little tired today and want to rest early. And I don't like crowded places." Clare was deeply stunned by the second rejection in a row. She immediately became dejected. Benson, with a wry smile, consoled her. "If he doesn't like it, there's nothing we can do. Maybe next time we could go eat together." "Yes," Clare replied sadly. Suddenly, someone called her name loudly. It was the Duke and Duchess. Everyone was waiting for her. Quentin, upon seeing Clare, couldn't help but exclaim, "Your braids are so cute." Hearing the call, Clare immediately ran over, not forgetting to apologize for being late. Ashira responded generously, "It's all right, let's go." Now, Clare, who had been looking forward to the fireworks display for a long time, beamed. "Okay," she replied enthusiastically. Benson, relieved to see her spirits lifted, breathed a sigh of relief. That evening, as the streetlights twinkled and the crowds thronged the streets, Clare gazed at the scene in awe. "Wow, it seems everyone has come to see the fireworks, just like us. The lights are so bright," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. Marion turned to Quentin. "How long until midnight?" he inquired. Quentin checked his watch. "It seems there are still 2 hours left," he replied. "It seems like a long wait." Benson suddenly raised his hand. "I'll go buy some hot drinks." I saw a few stalls on the way here. He offered. Marian nodded in agreement, and Quentin offered to accompany him. Marian addressed Ashira. Let's find a place to wait while Benson and Quentin return. He suggested. Claire, her eyes darting around, felt a thrill of excitement. Wow, so many interesting things. Suddenly, a shout caught her attention. Mom, there's an empty spot over there. Hurry, let's go. The boy's mother gently chided him. It's dangerous, don't run. Hold my hand so you won't fall. Ashira approached Claire, who stood mesmerized. Claire, we have plenty of time. Let's go sit over there and wait, she suggested. But Claire's gaze remained fixed on the mother and son. Ashira followed her line of sight, wondering, what is she looking at? Before them, a family strolled hand in hand, laughing and chatting happily. The boy's laughter rang out, clear and bright. In that moment, a pang of loneliness seemed to pierce Claire's heart. Her every expression was completely transparent to Ashira, who stood beside her. Suddenly, Ashira sighed dramatically. Oh dear, what should we do? There are more people than I expected. It would be troublesome if we got separated, she said loudly. Claire looked up at Ashira. Suddenly, Ashira extended her hand towards Claire. Come, Claire, let's hold hands, she said. Claire stared at Ashira in surprise, echoing the words unconsciously. Hold hands. Within a second, Claire's hand rested in Ashira's warm grasp, but someone seemed displeased as Marian radiated a palpable chill. He spoke with forced casualness. Yes, it would be troublesome if we got separated. As soon as he finished speaking, both he and Ashira grasped Claire's hands firmly and walked forward. Indeed, in this instance, the two of them were remarkably in sync. The three of them truly looked like a happy family. As they walked towards the fireworks display, a feeling of joy blossomed in Claire's heart. How should I describe this feeling? It's nostalgic and exciting. During the fireworks festival at the haunted house, I was so scared I hid. But now, with Duke Marian and Lady Ashira, this is wonderful. Let's go to see the fireworks. I'm so excited. A while later, as midnight approached, a gentle voice called out, Claire. Ashira looked anxiously at the little girl fast asleep on her lap, murmuring, what should we do? Staying up until midnight is really too difficult for her. She informed Marian, the fireworks are about to start. Marian stood up abruptly. He addressed Ashira, since we're leaving, give her to me. He lifted Claire into his arms, saying to Ashira, let's hurry. Ashira replied with concern. Holding her like that must be tiring. But for Marian, it was nothing. She's light, so it's all right, he said. Indeed, she was light, but the way Marian held the girl was strangely awkward. Ashira glanced at him subtly. She thought, they look like father and daughter. Suddenly feeling a little embarrassed, Ashira quickly covered her mouth. Wait, if they were father and daughter. Then Ashira continued her internal monologue, her face flushing crimson. Covering her face with both hands, she cried out inwardly, what am I even thinking? I'm being silly, realizing that my feelings for the Duke won't change anything. Even so, I'm not really the Duchess. He once told me, I will surely give you your freedom in a few more years. This life will soon be over. To be able to welcome the new year like this, I don't know if today will be the last day. Ashira mused, her thoughts a quiet counterpoint to the vibrant celebration around them. Both of them stood in silence, watching the fireworks blossom against the night sky. So beautiful, Ashira thought, captivated by the spectacle. Suddenly, something caught her attention and she glanced sideways. At some point, Marian had stopped watching the fireworks and turned his gaze towards his beautiful Lady Ashira. Surprise flickered through her. Since when has he been looking at me? She wondered, a warmth spreading through her chest. Is this real? Marian's gaze was serious as he looked at Ashira. There's something I want to tell you. He began, his voice low and resonant against the backdrop of the exploding fireworks.